gentlemen, boys and girls, and all of the fun stuff in between the two polars. I'm here today with a guy I met recently doing my wife's suspension. He's a really fucking cool guy, really interesting dude, does a lot of neat shit, living his goddamn best life the way he wants to live it, and I think we
That's
all
right.
we all appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Steve Easley.
Hello.
It's so weird when you when you introduce someone and it's like, oh yeah, okay, that was me. Okay, now I should.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi. Here I am. Cool. Nice to meet all the people that I'm not actually meeting, and we've met once. It's cool. I've
Yeah.
already introduced myself to you, but we can do it again.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Um, so I wanted to start off with letting everyone know, because a lot of people I think that are gonna watch this on first run may not be familiar with what it is that you do. So you do piercings, body modification, suspension, um, all of those things. And how long have you been doing those things?
Oh boy. That's only like partially the list of things that I do, but so I've been piercing about 20 years now. October of this year, October of 2019, I'll hit my 20-year mark. I started piercing in October of 99. That's including my apprenticeship though, but I had a really rough, bad apprenticeship. It didn't last long at all.
Hmm.
My apprenticeship was, so I started piercing in October of 99 and my apprenticeship was over by February of 2000. So that was not an appropriate apprenticeship by any means. I was still a minor. Uh, that alone is a crazy story. So I started in a dirty river town in small town Iowa, and I worked at a biker studio. And the dude that taught me how to pierce was 60% blind in one eye and 40% blind in the other eye, and he was like the go-to piercer in town.
Wow.
They didn't allow minors in the studio at all. You could go in and get like an ear pierced with a parental consent or whatever, but like you couldn't come in the studio as a minor alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept sneaking in there and like bringing my stepmom or my aunt to get to like sign for me to do piercings on me. And then I just kept bugging the dude at like 15 years old. Like, dude, I'm already piercing my friends. Like, you should just let me learn how to do it properly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So eventually he gave in, and he started apprenticing me. My apprenticeship was absolutely horrible. He would have me set up to do the piercings for him and then kick me out of the room when he actually did the piercings. I wasn't even allowed to watch the piercings. That happened for the first 2 months. Eventually I started being able to like go in the room, but I wasn't hands on. I just stood in the corner and watched basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then come February, he was just an employee. He was in like an independent contractor. The studio was actually owned by this biker dude who didn't even tattoo, just this dude named Bear. He had the word hair tattooed across his chest.
Why does everybody know a biker guy named Bear? I had a biker guy named Bear.
Everybody knows a biker named Bear. A biker named Bear and a biker named Tiny.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna go super back on Bear, but one story that I remember, Bear's deceased now, but one story I remember about Bear is he met his wife at a biker rally and asked her, hey, do you like a man with hair on his chest? And she said yes, and he went and got the word hair tattooed across his chest, and they had been together ever since.
That's so
like
dope.
That's pretty cute. I don't know.
That's a dope story.
But so Bear owned the studio. He wasn't a tattoo artist. He wasn't a piercer. He was just a biker who wanted to own a tattoo shop. Mm-hmm. Him and Charlie, the guy that I was apprenticing under, they got into it really, really bad one day. And Bear kicked Charlie out of the studio. It was like, you're not welcome here anymore. Charlie did the spiteful thing that tattooers do and opened a shop a half a block down the street. Technically, since I was Charlie's apprentice, I had to go with him.
Yeah.
So then it went from, oh, I'm a piercing apprentice to I'm just your grunt worker. I'm helping you build this new studio. Haven't shown me anything. And then one day Bear reached out to me and he was like, hey man, I fired Chuck. I didn't fire you. Like, if we don't have a piercer, if you think that, if you think you can learn through trial and error and all of that, you're more than welcome to come back to the studio.
Oh, cool.
And Charlie was not a nice guy. And again, like, I was laying flooring and moving refrigerators for the dude. I wasn't learning how to pierce at all.
Yeah.
So I went back to the old studio. I mean, it made, I was like 15 or 16 years old. It was kind of a slime ball thing to do, but the whole him leaving and opening a studio down the street wasn't cool either. So it was like I had to choose the lesser of two evils. And
Yeah.
I don't
Sometimes
know.
you got to pick a team.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if my career would have evolved the way that it did had I not made the choice. I given up. I may have not even finished my apprenticeship.
So how long is a
so yeah,
normal
I started-
apprenticeship?
a piercing apprenticeship can be, these days it's anywhere from 1 to 3 years, and
Okay.
it really depends. There's so many different ways to do it. You can hire a piercer as counter staff first, and they can get to filling out release forms and selling jewelry and dealing with the customers. It's way different than it used to be. Like, the old school mentality is, I brought you on, you owe me everything.
Yeah.
Now it's like, you can't really do that this day and age. So, it's like, hey, we're providing a service to the public, and you still have to be like a cog in that wheel. So, like, nowadays, like my last apprentice, while he was apprenticing, he got paid an hourly. He got to keep tips that, of course he got to keep some tips, but, he got paid an hourly on top of being able to keep the tips, and was still learning the trade, still learning the craft. I apprenticed him for about 2.5 years before he went on his own. And then he continued to pierce for me for about 3 years, and then moved out of state. He doesn't even pierce anymore, unfortunately, but
So
that was
when you
5 or
have
6 years ago.
when you have somebody apprenticing for you, is it kind of your call when they're ready? You kind of like, okay, I think you're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, you can start, it depends on if the studio is yours or not, if you're working for somebody else, or if they brought the apprentice on and they're just like paying you extra to teach them, or if they're actually your apprentice, or what. I mean, there's so many different ways to do it. I mean, I think in Oregon, where you're like 2,000 hours or something, you have to prove that you've worked in a studio for a really long amount of time. But not all states like that. Every regulations. Actually, where I'm at, where my brick and mortar piercing studio is, Iowa, there are no piercing regulations whatsoever. It's kind of ridiculous. We can get into that more later if you want to, but yeah, it just showing them the ropes, teaching them sizes, teaching them gauges, teaching them different styles of stone, different gem settings, like all of that kind of stuff. And then once they get that down, then you start having them do like jewelry change outs, stuff where they're not actually puncturing the body, like where they're working on healed things. So they'll like swap out rings for people and stuff. And then once you see that they're pretty good with that, once they're not shaking and super nervous anymore, and then you can throw a needle in their hands. And then you let them start piercing their friends for free, or like you buy the jewelry and or whatever. You buy the jewelry, get the piercing free, and then what I personally do when I apprentice someone is at that stage, once they've pierced their friends, and I'm confident in a way that they pierce people that they know, then we have designated shifts where this is the apprentice piercing. Our normal $40 piercing fee is cut in half or even more. Be aware that he's not super skilled in everything, and that you're volunteering to have him learn on you, but you're getting a discount because of it.
So very similar to like going to a beauty school to get your hair cut.
Yeah.
You know what you're getting into.
Similar.
It's
Exactly.
probably going to be fine, but you didn't pay full price, so
Yeah. Just like that.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm
I'm the apprentice is there to, like, if the piercing gets super messed up, like, we can redo it, or we can offer them, hey, come back in 2 weeks when it's healed, or 2 or 3 weeks or whatever when it's healed enough, and we'll re-pierce you.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
I'll step in for free. Yeah, but it varies, and like I said, it varies in different studios. It varies in different states, but for the most part, I'd say that this is what it is now.
Okay. And you guys also, do you do tattooing in your studio or only piercing?
This is a piercing only studio.
Okay.
So Release Body Modification is the name of my studio, or actually we've dropped the body modification and now it's Release Body Piercing. Just to tailor to the clients that we're going for. We're going for like a higher end. We sell gold, we sell diamonds, you know.
Yeah.
So take the modification out, take the Sigma out. It's just
Hmm.
body piercing now.
Now, do you still
Um,
do the mods if people want them?
I do,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
That's like an appointment only thing, and you kind
Yeah.
of, you gotta know somebody or be a friend of a friend, or prove, you know what you're talking about, and you know that you're going to be able to heal what you're asking for, kind of thing.
So that community, it's a really tight knit community. Everyone knows each other.
The modification or the piercing or just all of the
Modification,
above?
modification
Yeah,
seems to be a
for the most
yeah, and
part.
suspension as well. I've noticed. Um,
Yeah, I mean, man, like way back before, like back in the 90s and even in the early 2000s, all anyone had was BME. All anyone had was like Mod Blog and
mhm.
IAM.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But with everything else in the world, with the evolution of Facebook and Instagram and all of that stuff, like everybody in every industry is pretty much, every small community or industry has a way to connect with each other now. So there are piercers that, like, I mean, with suspension, there are like suspension people in like Brazil and stuff that are like started
That's cool.
reaching out to further educated people to try to start learning things that they wouldn't have been able to 15 or 20 years ago.
Yeah, the extension of the ability to connect with people and communicate, and there's a lot of good things about technology. There's some bad stuff too, but one of the good things is being able to find your tribe, right? Being able to go
Yeah.
out there and be like, these are my
Oh
people.
yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And like way back in the day, it was message boards,
Hmm.
and then like there would be like stuff like BME barbecues, where you would just be like, here's a location, we're gonna have a barbecue, and you would meet a bunch of like friends from message boards that maybe you've never met in real life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you guys together and fuck up stuff together,
Yeah, absolutely. And here the funny thing is for me is I knew suspension existed when I met Shayla, my wife, that you suspended.
Mhm.
Um, but I was like, oh my god, when I met her and I found out like she was into that stuff, I was like, well, she's not gonna like me. I'm just like, I'm not cool enough. I'm not,
Right.
like I don't have the you
The
know,
gusto.
yeah, right. Like I don't have the swag
Yeah.
to get a body mod girl to like me. Um, but I found it to
For
be a
sure.
really welcoming community, even for people like me. And I
It
feel like
definitely
an
can be.
outsider. Um, and I talked about it in the article I wrote about when you suspended Shayla. How I didn't know anyone except for her when I walked into that backyard, and we were there for several hours. And at no point did I feel like an
Mhm.
outsider or
Right.
unwelcome. Everyone was kind. Everyone had empathy for each other. It was actually a really beautiful experience, and I'm really glad I got to
It
be there.
really was, man.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm really glad that you guys would experience that as well. That just came together so well. Like I could not be happier with the way that turned out. And I'm not sure. Like I didn't really make like the whole group aware, but we almost called that off like a couple of days
Really.
before. The local that was helping me organize the event, that was like, she started getting a bunch of anxiety, and she was just like, I just don't know. I don't know if it's like I promised you a certain amount of people, and now people are bailing, and but man, it could not have came together better.
It was really great. It was really
Everything was there, and
it's
it
a
was beautiful.
deeply fucking spiritual experience. It really is.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
having like I had never been to one in person, and I never had any desire to do it at
Right.
all until that day.
Yeah.
Until that day. And I saw the emotional impact it had on the people doing it. And I was like, this is like DMT without having
Oh
to
yeah.
find DMT. That
Yeah, seriously, it can be like life altering like that for people, definitely, especially their first time. And I mean, it's funny that you make like a mind altering comparison, because there are definitely people who they've done that first suspension, and then now they're just constantly chasing that dragon, like trying to find like another suspension that makes them feel similar to the way they felt with their first one.
Yeah. I could see that, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you do yoga a lot. You're a very spiritual dude, right? You're really in
I
touch.
am. It's that all of that is kind of new. I mean, like not like all of that, but like the yoga, um, just most things that I do that I find pretty interesting. I just dove in head first and just continued to dive, and I'm still just going deeper and deeper. Um, I had done yoga a couple times prior to this, but really the first time that I did serious yoga and was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go do that again tomorrow
Mm-hmm.
was like the beginning of October of 2018. Like it wasn't even a year ago.
Okay.
And since then, like I've got my 200-hour certification. I'm a certified yoga instructor now. And like I do yoga. I try to make it a point to do yoga every single day, if not even twice a day. And there are different styles of yoga that I do. I just hosted a 3-day suspension event called the Release Retreat
Mm.
here in Iowa, and we had yoga every morning. That was like how we started our day. It was like, all right, good night, everybody. Yoga's at 11, and when that's over, that's when we're going to start getting things rolling. And
Yeah.
I think that, like, everybody was really, even people that had never done yoga before, it was, everybody who's there is already there for suspension, so they're already coming with an open mind, like, yeah, I'll try something different. So like we got a lot of people that never would have tried yoga in any other circumstance to like give it a shot, and a lot of people were like, wow, like this is really awesome. Like I'm gonna try to like maybe I'm not gonna do it every day like you, but like I'll try to do it a couple times a month, or I'm definitely gonna look into this a little bit further, and it started our days off proper. We got up, we got moving, we got breathing, we got sweating, and after that, it was just like, all right, we're already rolling. Let's just keep rolling.
Yeah, I find stuff that because I'm really into meditation and I'm
Yeah,
mostly I would consider myself a Buddhist, but not exactly, like
yeah, me too. That's how
yeah.
I feel about it. I'm
Uh
not. I don't. There's not one specific thing that I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, that's it for me.
mhm,
But that's probably what I relate to the most for
yeah.
sure.
Take things that you identify with from different kind of um what's the word I'm looking for? Disciplines, and then
Hmm.
apply them to your life in ways that make sense for you. That's kind of my vision for
Oh yeah.
spirituality.
Yep.
And for me, I was a really angry person for a long time. And when I committed to the concept of not doing harm, it really changed my life. It really did.
Yeah.
When I stopped killing spiders, I know it sounds silly, but I was always terrified of spiders. And when I stopped killing them, I stopped being afraid of them. I pick them up with my hands
Yeah,
now. Yeah.
yeah, me too. Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I live on an old horse ranch. Like out on like my backyard's a cornfield or a soy field, depending on what year it is.
Hmm.
Like I live out in the middle of bumfuck Iowa. There's spiders everywhere. There's bugs everywhere. There's
Yeah.
I mean, every now and then a mouse will get in the house and stuff. Like I try to do like no kill traps, and
Hmm.
I'm not gonna I'll pick the spider up and throw it outside or whatever.
Yeah. The girls are always like, "Hey, come get this. We're not gonna kill it because we love you, but we need you to evict this motherfucker."
Yeah, yeah.
So when you started down this journey of suspension and eventually like yoga and I'm sure you do meditation as well. Yoga is a deep meditation.
Oh
Um,
yeah, definitely. I mean, I with my yoga certification, I had to lead a meditation, and since then, the studio that I go to, I lead meditations at the studio sometimes. Like, I mean, like I was first a student, and now I'm a teacher,
hmm.
all still in the same studio. Like, there's one specific place in town that, like, I feel like it's sacred ground for me. So I'm gonna, if they're gonna have me now that I'm certified, that's the place I want to be. So yeah, I've led a couple different kinds of meditations. I've done like a sound meditation, like sound healing,
Hmm.
yoga nidra, which is like the stage in between awake and asleep.
Okay.
That's a really cool one. Um, there's a whole bunch of different kind of meditations, and yeah, I mean, it really helps center yourself and ground yourself. And it's really just the yoga and the meditation in general has, like, you said a little bit earlier that like I'm a calm, cool motherfucker or
Hmm.
whatever
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
phrasing you used, but like it wasn't always that way,
Yeah.
you know. Yoga has helped me a lot with that. It's definitely like it's calmed my emotions. It's enabled me to slow down my thought process and do things more calculated.
It gives you that extra tick,
Um,
that extra
yeah,
step in your
yeah, it
brain.
really does.
Yeah, before you react. Yeah,
Hmm.
I noticed
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it does.
Before I got into this type of stuff, I was very, very reactionary. And I would always be apologizing for my emotions after the fact. And now I kind of have that extra moment in my brain to say, wait a second, that might not be the appropriate reaction.
For
You should
sure.
probably consider what that person is feeling and what they're going through
Definitely.
because this is not about you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. It's like this person can only accept me as far as they allow their stuff to. So if whatever their problem is, that's their problem. And it's I'm not gonna allow it to affect me,
Hmm.
and I'm not going to cater to making it worse. You
Yeah, you're not going to feed the
know?
beast. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do
Yeah.
you find that in doing that and finding that in yourself that it's really because I noticed that your leadership ability was really excellent. You were able to direct people with force and empathy. And that's really
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of skill to do that.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
It's very
Um,
difficult to say you're going to do this the way I tell you to do it and then have that person not feel smaller than you.
yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's I mean, even so that Portland event specifically, I mean, like not everyone that was helping was trained before. There
Hmm.
were a few people who, yeah, they're a part of the suspension community, and they've suspended with other crews or whatever. They've had a little hands-on here and there, or they've been to interview or whatever. But I mean, if you talk to a human like they're actually a human
Hmm.
and not bark orders at them, they're gonna pick it up a lot easier. They're gonna learn a lot better and a lot faster. And if they do mess up, as long as you come at them with a little bit of compassion,
Hmm.
they're gonna learn from their mistakes and they're not gonna feel guilty about it a week later.
Yeah. And I find that it makes people want to follow you. It inspires them to say, this is a person that I can trust. I can
That
trust.
all right,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Um, and it's important when you're doing that type of stuff that
It
the
is.
environment's controlled and it's safe, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah,
So,
because I mean, like, there are so many different things going on at once. I mean, there's so many safety factors that come into play with not only like weight distribution or load bearing or anything like that. I mean, there's cross contamination, there's blood control, there's all of this stuff. And if
mhm,
like if somebody pokes themselves with a needle that's been through somebody else's body, that's on my hands. I'm
mhm,
the one hosting that event. I'm the one who brought all of that stuff there.
yeah,
So ultimately, I'm the one who's responsible. So yeah, I mean, I do my best to make sure everything's covered and do it, as calm and collected as possible.
yeah.
I find
How
it's the way people react the best.
how much math is involved? Because there's weight distribution, there's making sure that the structure is secure. I saw you doing a lot of that, like intuitively, intuitively doing it,
Oh yeah,
but
that takes some practice.
yeah.
It took me a very long time to actually figure out like safety factors and stuff with suspension equipment. And majority of things that we are rated, they're adapted from other communities. We use arborist stuff, we use rock climber stuff.
Hmm.
There are a lot of different things. So they already have like a specific safety factor, but we're throwing something in there that has never been rated and can probably never be rated, and that's the human body. That's the skin,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
everybody's skin reacts differently. So it's you it's a I can do this and I can do this, and I'm going to make sure that the things that I actually have control over are going to be done to their greatest ability, because there's always the skin that's like, well,
Yeah. Yeah.
you you never know with the skin.
When I
It's a lot
was
stronger than most people think it is, but
It's
you
really
never know.
strong. It's really strong. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's like
it is extremely elastic, very
and
durable.
when you see it in person for
Yeah,
the first
there are
time, it's
many. Right.
yeah.
Yeah, there are many occasions where people hang from just one hook, and if you're putting 180 pounds or even more on just one hook. I mean, again, you can test the hook, you can test all the equipment above the body, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't know what's going to go on with the body. But for the majority of it, it's extremely durable and it's not going to tear. And usually, if it does tear, it's insignificant. It can be repaired.
I wonder if part of the experience is the pain, because pain is a doorway to I don't know, really getting in touch with yourself, and the people doing it don't appear to be in pain, right? And so do you think part of the
Right.
transcendent experience is kind of letting go of that? Do you think that's a big part of it?
I do. That's something else that's definitely different for every individual.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like some people bear the physical pain so they can release a certain emotional pain.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
a lot of people suspend for all kinds of different reasons, but suspension is a giant accomplishment. It's something that literally a fraction of a percent of the world has ever done. So again, everybody does it for different reasons, but it's a lot about letting go and starting new. And it's mind over matter shit. And it's when you've gotten to the point where you're already there at the event and it's your turn, you're gonna get butterflies in your stomach, and you're gonna do it through every step of the process. You're gonna go through the piercing, and you're gonna be so nervous, and you're gonna go through it, and it's either gonna be like, oh, that was painful as fuck, or oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. But it's all still about like seeing what you can handle, and grasping that, and then eventually letting go.
And I think that's so important for humans to do in one way or
I do
another.
too.
Yeah.
In so many different forms,
Yeah. For
somebody,
me, it was
somebody that I go
skateboarding.
to yoga with. Yeah.
For me, it was skating, throwing myself downstairs, and realizing, oh, I can get up.
You can get back up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same. I mean, it's all completely different categories, but it's all the same shit.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. So when I very first started going to yoga at this studio, somebody was asking me about suspension, and they were like, why do you do it? Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, you're really into CrossFit, right? Like, why do that? And it just like, even before I got more explanatory than that, like even just putting that in their head was like, oh shit, like I do weird shit to my body too. Like something clicked in her head.
Yeah. No, that's dope, man. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And so for you as a person now, existing in a crazy world, right? Because the world is kind of losing its fucking mind all the time,
Yeah.
This is something that, from my perspective, that can give a person an anchor.
Mm-hmm.
When the sea is stormy out there, you're still you're connected, right?
Well, it's the same. I mean, again, it's completely different, but similar to like human rights kind of shit. It's like nobody can tell me what to do with my own body, except for myself. And like, I can push my body as far as I feel like I can push my body. There are people who have gotten pierced and not gotten off the ground. It happens a lot. And that's, I don't see that as a failure. I don't see that as a big deal at all. It's like you may have not completely left the ground with your body, but you still went further than the majority of people do. You're still pierced with giant piercing needles and had hooks put in your body and pulled against them. And even just the simple fact of showing up to the event, it's a step further than most people are going to go.
It's a series of battles, internal battles.
It is. It really is.
And it's one to the next in rapid succession.
And then it gets to the point where it's a battle between your physical self and your mental self.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to use your mental whatever, your mental gusto. You have to use, you got to become mentally clear in order to have physical clarity and be like, oh yeah, this is just my body. This is just pain. Like I can deal with this. I can get over this. And most of the time, when you're suspending somebody, especially like a first timer, you can see that moment. You can see that moment where they realize like, oh shit, this is it. Like All
Yeah.
I have to do is convince myself my feet can leave the ground, and when they do, it's magical. It's a beautiful
The change on the people's
thing.
faces that I saw during that day, every person I saw go up was a different person once their feet left the ground.
Yes,
They changed
yes.
completely in that moment, and you
Oh
see it.
yeah.
It's
Uh
tangible.
huh.
Yeah.
And then they come back down and they're still just processing. And
Mm-hmm.
some people will process for weeks or even months, and then out of nowhere they're like, oh, I need to do that again, or.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you run into, because of how powerful the experience is, have you run into people who after doing it kind of struggle with the recovery? Because you're releasing a lot of
Yes, and
endorphins and a lot of neurochemicals, and it takes time to recover from that.
definitely, it
Yeah.
definitely does. So, when I plan an event like that, especially somewhere where I'm going to show up, I'm going to do an event, and then I'm going to leave, so I'm not there to physically check on the people. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely make sure everybody has my contact information. I definitely warn them beforehand. Like I'll make like a private Facebook group that we can just discuss all of the inner workings of the event before I even get there, everything that everybody needs in order to prepare, and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we call it post suspension depression, post suspension depression, PSD,
Okay.
and it's definitely a real thing.
Yeah.
Some people, it's such a sense of accomplishment when they do it that they just like, well, what next? Like,
Yeah.
I got as high as I can get, and
Yeah.
where do I go from here? You know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
You can
it's
only climb the mountain
definitely
so many times before it's just a mountain.
right.
Right. Yeah. I thought about that a lot, and I worried about it for some of the people that I saw, but everyone, seemed to take it really well. Um,
Hmm.
and I think everyone, like you said, is prepared. They know that's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And usually most people will come out of it. I mean, like, I don't want to say a better person, because who am I to judge? If they were a good person and now they're a better person or whatever. But they do come out with some form. They take something. They come out with some form of mental clarity.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Call it growth, call it
Yeah.
expansion, something. Yeah.
Right.
So you do this as a job. It supports you, in addition to your studio. Um, but really, it's such a cool thing, and I really love it because I'm doing my thing here, right? This show, I love doing the show. Doing this makes me
Yeah.
deeply happy, right? Um, I do this because I found myself feeling disconnected from people, and I needed an excuse to force a person to focus on a conversation and really
That's really
connect,
awesome.
you know? And then I think that the value that I get from watching that happen, I get a ton of value from it, just watching it. And I thought to myself, well, I think I can do that. I think I'm mature enough. I think I'm old enough. I think I've lived enough that I can connect with people. So I feel like it's a service to humanity to do this because I think too many people are too disconnected. We're looking at screens a lot, and I know it's kind of ironic that this is on a screen, but um, it's kind of a different form. And do you find yourself thinking about that when you're doing what you do? Because it's doing the same thing. It's connecting people.
Oh yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
My views on all of it have changed so many different times on so many different spectrums. When I first started doing suspension, I had a body piercing background. The
Hmm.
thing that I was most involved in was throwing hooks. It was the thing that I wanted to learn how to do. I wanted to learn how to put the hooks in people.
Hmm.
I wasn't the one, like, I mean, I was, but like, if there was a group of us, like, I would try to be like the lead piercer or whatever. I'd try to run the piercing side of it and then
Hmm.
send them off to somebody else to be like suspended.
Hmm.
Or, I wasn't the one doing the belay, running the rope that actually lifts them up. I wasn't, of course I had like a well-rounded knowledge of all of that, but my choice was I'm going to go over to the piercing department.
Hmm.
Um, Probably like 8 or 9 years ago or something, that completely changed, and now there is absolutely no aspect of suspension that is an insignificant aspect from literally the person that puts the bandages on at the end is just as important as everybody else, because it
Mm-hmm.
has to be done properly or there's cross contamination issues or whatever. But
Yeah.
I realized that like I did as much as I could in the
Mm-hmm.
piercing department, and it was time to move forward. And then I started with like what we call rigging, which is, you know, just the lines that connect from the belay, well, from the pulleys to whatever rig point, like, you know, same as like a climbing rig plate or something, and then running the lines from that to the hooks. And I
Mm-hmm.
started learning how to do all types of different knots. You know, I started doing research on what the best knots were, you know, what the safest knots were, um, what percentages the the working load or the breaking strength of the rope was by which specific knot I used, all of that stuff. And then from there, you know, I started doing like really rudimentary, really basic suspensions of just like, you know, two hooks from a person's back and just lines that just go just straight up to the, you know, tied at the rig, come down to the hook and go straight up. And now I say now, but it's been quite a while that like I've started viewing suspension more as an art form, and I try to create art with the suspensions that I do through the rigging. And I try to do like really elaborate, like really geometric style, like rigging.
I saw
Um,
some of the pictures from your recent the release retreat.
yeah,
I saw some pictures you put up on social media, and they're. I agree. It's beautiful. It
thanks.
the person upside down, with they're kind of sitting lotus style, I believe.
Yeah, yep,
That is one of the most beautiful things I think I've ever seen. Honestly,
thanks.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I
like a
mean, like
painting.
it can be, yeah. I mean, you know, if you get a decent photograph, you know, a decent photograph of that, I mean, like it could be displayed somewhere, and that's the way that I see it. And
Hmm.
like even if not, even if there is no physical evidence of what happened, like it's beautiful. It
It's
just makes it just brings it's like the cherry on top, you know. It
yeah.
just brings everything. It brings the beauty of everything else, and it makes it just as visually appealing as it is emotionally appealing, as you know, as it is everything.
Yeah. I think that
um
even like you
and so
said,
I've been doing that for a while.
yeah, that's
Go ahead.
and it looks like something that would take it's baby steps. You don't just show up one day and be like, I'm gonna make art with rope and humans.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's the same, you know, as not using hooks. It's the same as rope bondage. It takes a while.
Hmm.
You got to mess around with. You got to play with knots. You got to play with different parts of the body. You got to figure out what works and what doesn't work. You got to know, again, like you mentioned before. You got to know math. You got to know like, oh, that's too drastic of an angle. That makes that unsafe. Like
Hmm.
there are a whole bunch of different factors that come into play. Um, and when I initially started doing rigging like that, I was more focused on the visual aspect of the rigging itself. And I wasn't really, I kind of lost touch with, you know, what we're talking about of like being connected with the suspendee.
Hmm.
And it was like, there was a while where, you know, I mean, I said, since, you know, I've said in the past, like, since when did passion become arrogance? But
Wow,
that's,
that's some shit that you just said. I've never heard
it
anyone say
is.
that. That is some shit. That's thank you.
Yeah,
I'll
cool.
never forget
But
that statement.
cool. But the thing is, I was kind of talking out of my ass with it when I first started saying it, because, like, yeah, I was definitely passionate about it, but I was also kind of developing an ego about it because
Hmm.
people were starting to like seek me out.
Hmm. Well, yeah, you're a big deal. You're a big
It's
fucking
like, all
deal.
right, well, I'm your dude, you know. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
but I'm not. I'm just some fucking guy, you know. And it took me a really long time to realize that, and it took me another. Like I used to say, like in the beginning, like in the first couple of years that I was figuring that stuff out, I used to say, well, you signed up for this. You have to sit here and you have to
Hmm.
deal with it. And like maybe drawn out procedure and it may be painful and blah blah blah, but you're the one who came to me wanting to do this, and just keep that in mind, and let's get this fucking thing finished, and let's make art together. And
Hmm.
like I still, you know, I still slightly feel that way, but I'm looking at it in completely different lenses now, you know. Like I still do really aesthetic, really elaborate rigging, But
Mhm.
now I learned to also focus on the person and focus on the body, focus on the hook placement, focus on the angle of pull that my line is creating.
Mhm.
And I'll undo the rigging 2 or 3 times. I think it can be done better. Like if I go through an eyelet while I'm rigging, let's say like I'm doing like a 16 hook suspension, which I mean, like this is the kind of shit I do. Like one of the people in Portland, it was a 31 hook suspension, all on one dynamic line. Dynamic meaning it has one start and one finish. It's all one long continuous line. Has a knot at the end, goes through every hook, every single line, and then has a knot at the other end. That's really hard shit to do, and it takes a really long time.
Yeah.
And like expecting someone to sit there for 2 hours while you're sitting there running through lines that they've been sitting in like bloody hooks for the whole time, and you're like putting pressure on and releasing and running it through another hook and all of that. Like that alone is really taxing on a person. And then to expect them to be like, all right, cool, well, let's tighten it up and let's get you up in the air. Like you may have just burned everything that they had while you were rigging it. And you know,
Yeah.
so I've learned to feel the person out a whole lot more.
Do you ever have someone come to you
Make
and
sure, like,
request a complex suspension, and you kind of have to feel that person out and be like, maybe we start smaller, or
oh yeah,
do you ever
definitely.
do that? Do you ever step in and kind of, I don't know, take them back a little bit and explain that to them, what the thing that you just explained now?
No doubt.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. If somebody, so we call a like a vertical back suspension where you're standing vertically, you have hooks in your upper back and you go up vertically.
Mm-hmm.
It's in our community, it's referred to as a suicide suspension. It looks like somebody hanging from a noose.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody's only on suicide, take 24 hooks in the entire front of their body. Like that's, you don't know what stomach hooks feel like. You don't know what chest hooks feel like. You've only taken them in your back. And now you want to put them in all of these areas that you've never experienced before, and you want to do it all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's, sometimes I will definitely have a conversation with somebody like, well, why don't we just, if you want to take 16 hooks up your front, like why don't you do a suspension where you have like 6 hooks in your torso first and see how you really feel about that? Because we're dedicating a lot of time, and not only that, the rig line is expensive. So if I run rig line for 16 hooks, it could be upwards of 90 to 100 feet of rig line.
Yeah.
And for them to call it, or like continue to run it just because they weren't prepared for what it was actually going to be. Like, yeah, that can and has been a real thing in the past for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean,
can that line be reused?
It's fine. No. So we have like a standard protocol where like we have like gradients of cross contamination levels. It's like, so the hooks are definitely hot. You can't like, and then anything that touches the hooks, and like the further up it gets away from the hooks, the less potentially contaminated it could be. Right. But like stuff that can't be reprocessed, then it can't be reused.
So obviously anything that comes in contact with a bodily fluid, obviously.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. There are like, most of the hooks that we use in our community are either titanium or steel. Mm-hmm. If done properly, reprocess. But that's again something that you need to make the people know beforehand. It's like these hooks have potentially been in somebody else's body. Here's the like before the release retreat that I just did this last weekend, like I made a giant post in all capitals, like, if you do not want to use used hooks, please let me know. There are other hooks available. Mm-hmm. You have to purchase them, because if you don't want to reuse somebody else's hooks, nobody's going to want to reuse your hooks, kind of thing, But
is that my dog or your dog, by the way?
It's yours.
Okay.
I hope it's not my dog, man. My dog's with my girlfriend.
Okay.
He's on like the other side of town, so I really hope that wasn't him.
By the way, your dog is fucking adorable. I think everyone who meets your dog tries to steal him.
Yeah, Bonsai's shit, dude. Yeah, yeah, he's great. He's fantastic. People never believe that he's as old as he is. He's 10 years old. He's a 10-year-old French bulldog who's like
Wow.
kind of going blind, but
Wow. Yeah,
but he
I
lives a
would
great
never have
life, you
guessed.
know.
Yeah.
Like when I'm home, I live out in the middle of nowhere. Like I can just open my front door and he goes out and he does his own thing. Comes back an hour and a half later. They're like, I just had such a great and he's just kind of always been that way. So like, you know, I take him everywhere I possibly can. The only time he doesn't go with me is if I'm leaving the country, really.
Yeah.
You know, if he jumps in the van with me and goes to as many of these things as he possibly can, or anything else for that matter. But yeah, he goes everywhere with me, man. I take him to stores and stuff. He's a good
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah. So what moving forward in your life, like what are you looking forward to? Like what stuff that you want to step up to? What's your next mission? Because I know a guy like you is very driven, very ambitious, and you have a plan. There's something next. What's next?
You know, I mean, I am and I do, but I'm also kind of like the most go with the flow motherfucker you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not, you know, maybe you'll meet somebody that is more go with the flow, but like that, I try to live that. So, I had a child at a really young age. I have a daughter who just turned 20 like a couple of weeks ago.
Oh wow, happy birthday to her.
Yeah, yeah. Shout out to Alyssa. Um, so she lived with me.
Mm-hmm.
She moved out around this time last year. She's a full time college student. She's got a part time job. You know, she just moved in with her boyfriend. I had her basically the same time I started my piercing career. I got her mom pregnant literally 3 days after I turned 15.
Wow, that's
yeah,
heavy. That's heavy.
So
Yeah.
So I had to stick around and be a dad.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
my dad wasn't really in my life, and I promised her before she was even born that I would never be that dude.
Mm-hmm.
So and then her relationship with her mother just continued to drastically go downhill the further and the older she got. They haven't even spoken to each other, and I think before she was in high school, or maybe, you know, it's been a good 5 years at least since her and her mother have had any communication at all.
Mm-hmm.
But so she lived with me. She moved out for the first time in my life, man. And for the first time in my adult life, I am free.
Yeah.
I'm as free as I've ever been. So
Yeah.
right now, like, yeah, I definitely have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't really call it a plan. I'd call it like maybe like an outline, you know.
I feel that. Yeah, I dig it.
Before the release retreat, I was in Italy for a couple of weeks. There was a suspension event in Italy that I went to. It wasn't the first time I attended it, but you know, I'm trying to do more of those things.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be in Oslo right now. There's an event that actually starts like tomorrow or something, a suspension event that I was slated to be at, but I had some business issues with my piercing studio.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my buddies so I was going to travel Europe with one of my friends for a month. We were going to go to a suspension event in Oslo, and then like 10 days later there was a suspension event in Spain that we were going to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were just going to kind of train hop around Europe for a little bit. And you know, I just told him about all of the stuff that's going on business wise. And dude, the thing that he said to me, like I just said to you, like you're like, I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
He said, sometimes we have to clean our rooms before we can go out and play. And like I was like, dude, that's great. Like, so right now, you know, I just kind of I canceled my month-long Europe trip so right now I'm home. You know, I'm in Iowa. I just had this event. Like, it was kind of stupid of me to think that I could host this event and immediately bolt anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I had a little bit of cleanup to do and all of that stuff afterwards. But, like, I'm to the point now where, like, if things were running smoothly on the home front, like, I could bolt again.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just going to work a couple days piercing at my piercing studio for a month or two, try to find some guest piercers. If anybody's listening that meets or exceeds the Association of Professional Piercers minimum guidelines, like we'd probably consider you. Feel free to get at me.
Hear
We're
that,
looking for a
folks?
couple guest artists here and there.
That's a good
Um,
opportunity if you're out there
Come to Iowa
listening.
City, man. Come to Iowa City. It's where the University of Iowa is. It's a college town. School's about to start up. We're
Mm,
gonna get slammed.
that's a great
Things are really
opportunity.
cool here around this time of year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hot, it's muggy, it's humid, but it's not like Florida humid. You
The
know, it's the
Midwest, yeah. The
Midwest.
Midwest is
Yeah,
rugged in the summer.
yeah, it's dude. We get the best of both,
I grew
man.
up in
The
Indiana
best and
slash
worst of
Illinois.
both. Oh yeah, it's real similar to
Yeah.
Indiana for sure. So it's like, yeah, we get the really hot, humid highs and the really cold, frozen tundra of wasteland lows. It's
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's cool. No, it's not cool at all. Um,
How do
my
you?
daughter Alyssa is the only reason she's the only reason why I'm still in Iowa. Like I would have done this whole thing. I would have opened a studio in like a different state, a bigger city,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But like I've you know I've been piercing on the same block for 15 years now, and we're not only me, but we as a unit, as like release body piercing, we're so well established that there's no reason, it's here. This is home,
Yeah.
and it will always at least be partly home.
Well, and people
So
will
I'm gonna
come to
kick it here
you.
for a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm just starting to plan a couple more suspension days.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I did in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
I've got one that I'll be doing like mid to late September in Massachusetts. And I just recently started talking to this chick about doing one in somewhere in Alabama, like fairly close to Birmingham, but not
Oh,
actually
okay.
Birmingham.
Okay.
So these things are like, I try to book them as 2-day events.
Mm-hmm.
So just in case we don't get to, we can
And do you sort of
hold
treat it?
everything.
Do you sort of
If
treat
we
it like
do
a
that,
tour?
awesome. Do I treat it like it's what?
Do you sort of treat it like a tour? Like when you go out and do that, you try to line some, several events up so
Yeah,
that you're out kind of
yeah. Like,
maximizing your
so
time.
I bombed out, actually earlier than originally anticipated. I was going to do a guest spot at a piercing studio out there, and I ended up booking a 2-day suspension event in Redding, California instead, like almost super last minute. So I cut my Portland short, and I just bombed and drove straight down to Redding and
Mm-hmm.
did another fantastically beautiful 2-day suspension event there. And then that put me closer to Sacramento, where like my best friend and my godson live. And so like it just, I mean, like I said, dude, I'm gonna go with the flow, motherfucker. And if I can
Mm-hmm.
figure things out while I'm going, it just things. I don't want to arrogantly say things fall into place, but like
The
if I give
universe
them a little bit of a
provides.
push, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I also, so I own a body jewelry company. We do stone mask and gold. And so it's a wholesale company. We don't, well, we do sell to the public as well. Like we do online sales and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But for the majority of it, it's just really like simple stock, like glass, like things that studios sell, like on not on the cheap, but like on the lower scale, so
Mm-hmm.
people can use them to stretch their ears and stuff like that. Just
Okay.
like
Yeah.
round glass plugs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't, the majority of that is like outbound road sales. Like we do, people email us orders, people call in orders and stuff. But like if I'm out there like actually on the road getting it, like of course it does a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And I get to meet a lot more people, and then I get to set up more cool things, like more suspension events or
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
whatever. Or I end up doing like I take my mod supplies with me and end up doing like a tongue split or two, or like getting somebody an implant or an earlobe reconstruction, or they have their ear stretched and don't want it anymore, or whatever.
Man,
So
tongue splitting, that's so interesting to me. I love that. I think it's so cool. It's like one of the coolest things you can do to your body.
it is. It really is. It is the one. It's probably. I mean, it's up there with my most favorite modification that I have.
Mm-hmm.
I would never reverse it. Ever since I've done it, it just feels natural. I
Mm-hmm.
just feel like, tongue bifurcation is the way, like, I mean, I don't know, maybe humans are going to evolve to have a split tongue. I mean, it's two independent muscles,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
just that membrane in the middle holding it all together for anyone.
So, for you, like, what do you do recreationally. Because what I'm getting from you is that it's work, 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 be a dad. Finally done with being a dad, so let me work, 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 work,
Ish,
work.
you know.
You know.
I mean, I'll always be a dad.
Well, yeah, you know
You
what
know,
I mean,
I mean,
though.
I'm putting my daughter through college. Like,
You're,
I'll always, I mean, I just saw, like we just took her and her friend out to lunch, her and her pregnant friend out to lunch today. And like, um, I'll forever be a dad. That'll come first. But like
yeah.
now I finally have more me time kind of thing, and I
Mm,
can do more what I want. But what I mean, when work is so fun, when I love it so much, like I love the things that I do, man.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm super lucky that this is the life I have. I mean, I wouldn't call it luck, you know. Luck has a little bit to do with it, but like I have put myself on this path,
Mm-hmm.
and thankfully I've been able to stay on this path for as long as I have, and hopefully I can continue to be on this path for an unknown, undisclosed amount of time, way far in the future. Um, but I mean, I do yoga for fun.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
you know, it started with yoga, and now like I'm starting to do like calisthenics training, just push-ups, pull-ups, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Working on like a front lever and stuff like that. Just challenging my body in more ways. Like I started going to the gym a couple of years ago, and like I was doing a little bit of heavy lifting. My arms got huge for a while.
Mm-hmm.
They're about half the size they were now.
Yeah.
But like, dude, like, why do I need to do 400-pound deadlifts? There's machines that are made specifically to lift heavy weight. I
Mm-hmm.
need to be able to control my own body. I want to be
Mm-hmm.
able to control my own body weight. I want to be able to flip upside down. I want to be able to lift my own body. I want to be able to, oh shit, I just slipped off a cliff and I caught myself and I'm only hanging on by 2 fingers. Like, I need to save my own life. Like, that's the
Yeah.
kind of shit that interests me. That's the kind of shit that I'm working towards. So I carve stone for my jewelry company.
Oh, that's
I
cool.
make
That's cool. That's a
I
neat
sh-
hobby.
I sh- yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It really is, and I mean it can be financially beneficial as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as
Mm-hmm.
long as you're doing it right in the right market and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, like going back to meditation, like that's kind of therapeutic too, man. Just throw on a pair of headphones and stand in front of lapidary wheels for like fucking 10 hours. It's
Oh
like,
yeah.
whoa,
Yeah.
where did the time go? And all of a sudden, I've made this beautiful thing out of like something that was just like covered in mud and dusty and dingy before I picked it up. That
Yeah.
came from the earth,
Yeah.
like, but yeah. So, I mean, with the things that I do, I mean, suspension, it's not work. Like I couldn't just make a living off of suspension.
Mm-hmm.
If I did, it would be a very poor living. Like I'd be struggling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thankfully, like I've built up the brick and mortar piercing studio, and I got the jewelry company, and like, so really, I mean, I don't even set out with suspension. I don't really make a profit off of suspension. Like I go in, especially with days where like I'm traveling and stuff. It's like, all right, so here are my travel expenses. Here's how many days I'm going to be here. Here's what I need to survive. Here's what I need to not come out of pocket for this event. And as long as I get that, I don't care about
Yeah.
walking away with
Yeah.
anything above that, because the emotional experience, the mental experience that I have is worth more than that. It's
Far more valuable.
it's worth more than gold.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I feel that because I'm planning I do stand up, and
yeah,
I'm planning a stand up tour with a couple of buddies. We're gonna go out spring 2020. We're gonna do probably about 10 shows in about 15 days. Um, and one of the things that Shayla was like, "Well, how much money do you think you can make?" And I was like, "I don't know, but if I come home with the same amount of money that I left with, I'm a success."
yep. I did the same thing, man. Like fresh out of high school, like I was in a touring metal band, and like, dude, it was just 5 dudes in a van, and
Yeah,
like
yeah,
we would just play. We'd play to 1,000 people, or we'd play to 3 people. Like it didn't matter, you
yeah,
know. Like and some days it'd be like, oh yeah, you get the door and 2 people come in, and like it's like we got handed $7, and there's fucking 5 of us. That's not even $1 per person.
mm-hmm.
We just drove 4 hours to this venue, and our next venue is 6 hours away. But like,
Mm-hmm.
it's about the experience, and
Yeah.
it's like as long as you're not coming super out of pocket for it, like I have nothing I can complain about.
Yeah.
It's like if I make enough to get from point A to point B and I can move on to the next thing, I can move on to it happily, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
So that
and
kind of
I don't know, there's not really much else that I do in my personal time. Suspension and all of this stuff is my personal time.
yeah.
My life is my personal time.
I feel that. I really do. I try to kind of live the same way, you know. And people are like, "Well, what do you do for fun?" It's like, "Well, I'm having it right now. This is
Right.
fun."
It's just that age old thing, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And
Yeah.
like I don't sometimes things get hectic and sometimes it's like, oh fuck, I just need to like sleep for 14 hours or
Hmm.
whatever. But like it's okay. It's okay to do that. It's okay to be like, all right, I gave it my all. Let me just catch a breath real quick and I'll
Hmm.
get right back into it. Or, you take a break and you're like, all right, cool, I experienced that. Let's figure something else out.
So I think something that a lot of people who watch this struggle with and want to, I guess, get some insight from you about is you chose a particularly difficult path, a very artistic path. It's difficult to make a living with art in any form. Um,
It is.
so, how do you find, or how have you found over the years, the ability to stay focused and committed?
Yeah. I've lost it
Mm-hmm.
and had to regain it.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that I get frustrated with that, like, even something as simple as, oh, we need to paint the walls at the piercing studio, and then I put it off for a year and a half.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes it's hard. But in order, I can't let it go too far, or it's going to slip past the point of control. You know.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so I don't know, man. I just have taught myself to give everything that I
So
am
it
involved in my full commitment.
it lives in you. It lives inside of you, and
It does.
it's
It
always
has
there.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to. I mean, I I eat, sleep, and breathe suspension. I wake up thinking about hooks. I go to
Mm-hmm.
sleep thinking about rigging math. And it's not just suspension. And it's like, everything that I do kind of correlates with one another. The
Mm-hmm.
mindfulness of yoga and the mindfulness of suspension go together. The physical aspects of yoga and the physical aspects of suspension go together.
God, they
You
are
know,
so
you
similar. They really are.
they really
Yeah.
are. The math and the safety factors of rigging and the geometry in rigging go with the geometry of stone carving. Like I make plugs, I make plugs for people's stretched ears.
Mm-hmm.
In order to get a very specific size, I have to do math. I have
Mm-hmm.
to divide shit by pi. I you
Yeah.
know I have
Yeah.
to I have to know how to do all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So like I've been very fortunate in pretty much everything that I choose to do in my life somehow correlates with one another.
Yeah. And it's a journey of self-education that kind
It
of
really, yeah.
I find that keeps me going. So I started writing. I wrote for free for nothing for decades. And then eventually, my life kind of placed me in a position where I knew the editor of a magazine and I was like, "Hey, by the way, let me send you some stuff and if you like it, print it." And then that happened and I had to learn how to actually write, right?
Yeah.
I had to go from this is just some shit that no one will ever read, so punctuation's not important, structure's not important, to oh shit, people are gonna read this. It's really important.
Yeah.
Uh, and then with comedy, it is a craft. You have to
It's
learn.
still writing.
Yeah.
You still have
Mhm.
to have some sort of game plan. Again,
Mhm.
everything that you're saying, it one hand washes the other.
Mhm. Yeah. They all go hand in hand. And then eventually kind of led me to this place where we're having this conversation where I realized that the most important thing that I do, the thing that informs my art, is conversation, is connecting and
See,
getting.
and I think it's the same. I
Mhm.
think it's the same with me. Everything that I do has a sense of connection.
Mhm.
Whether even if it's just stone carving,
Mhm.
like I find a very specific like mineral or stone or whatever, and like I send the person photos of it when it's still raw. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
keep in mind it's not going to quite look like this, but like let me polish one of the surfaces for you so you can kind of see what the end result's going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put my heart and soul into that piece. And I know that I'm making it for a specific person, and I'm giving it my all because they're going to in turn appreciate what they have.
Mm-hmm.
It's adornment for them. So not only are they going to wear it to feel more beautiful and more empowered and
Mm-hmm.
adorned, other people are going to see it and they're going to be like, "Whoa, that's sweet. Where'd you get that from?"
And
So
that energy
it's all just
transfers.
connection.
That energy
Yeah,
transfers for sure. Yeah.
yeah.
I love I have certain items that I touch a lot. And I've always touched them a lot. And I find myself like if I'm sitting here, for example, I have this pen. Um my girlfriend bought me this pen. It's a Mont Blanc pen. It's a very expensive pen. I don't write with it that much, but I hold it a
I like
lot,
it. Yeah,
because there's love in there. She sacrificed to get me something special,
right,
right?
right. Somebody went out of their way, and
Mhm.
even just that little thought that most people like is so insignificant to most people, like it could mean the biggest fucking deal to someone.
Yeah. So one of the other things I wanted to ask you about, which I thought about earlier when we were talking before the show, when you were saying there was some, issues with your business that you had to deal with that, might delay you. Um, and I think this is an interesting question to ask everyone, is how do you find yourself staying true to yourself and your vision and dealing with difficult people who might be causing obstruction and causing anarchy or chaos, and how do you move on from that? Like, what's your philosophy with dealing with toxic attitudes and behaviors?
So in suspension, and just let's just like set everything else aside, just in suspension in general,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just now starting to figure that one out, man. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've been involved in this community for since like the community aspect of it probably since like 2006.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there are people that like I was best friends with for a decade that like we don't speak anymore, but we're still involved in the same community, and like we still share this passion for this thing,
Mm-hmm.
that is so important to so many people. So I mean that's really what it is. It goes back to connection again. It's like I may get discouraged along the way, and like me and so may have different opinions,
Mm-hmm.
but I need to stay passionate about what I do and realize that they are also passionate about the same thing that I'm passionate about. So even if we disagree as individuals, we're sharing this. We still have this common bond. And like I said, I'm just now starting to figure that out, man. Like the suspension community is a weird community, and I'm sure anybody who's in like a small close knit community can completely understand what I'm talking about. But like it's really loving and it's really embracing,
Mm-hmm.
but it can be two faced and it can be manipulative, and I'm just now figuring out how to let that kind of stuff roll off.
What I
And
find.
honestly, like the mindfulness and the meditation and the yoga and all of that stuff, that has helps drastically. And again, it's been less than a year, but like even dude, on a weekly basis, people are like reaching out to me like, yo, I see the growth that is occurring in you, and
Mm-hmm.
I just want you to know that like keep it up, and
Yeah.
that alone is so encouraging to drive me to just continue to be, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Well, like one type of negative personality or a kind of personality archetype that you run into often in life seems to be the type of person who leverages a community for their own ego. People who use words like love and light, and especially I don't know if you know this about me, but I made extracts. I ran my own weed company for several years.
Oh, cool.
I made dabs. Um,
Yeah.
and one of the reasons I left that community was because I found it to be very aesthetic. It was very shallow. Um,
Hmm.
and I'd see a guy who just stole $5 grand from me on Facebook saying, it's all about peace and love and community and let's help each other
Right.
out. And it's like, dude, I couldn't pay my rent because of you. Like, I'm a cool guy and this isn't gangster stuff, so like there's no beef, but like it's just money. But
Yeah. Right.
so I found that it's sort of a level in life you get to when you begin to recognize that, right? When you begin to be able to spot those people. And then it's just a matter of skill to avoid it if you can.
That's really what it is. That's what it's come down to.
Mhm.
It's more. It's like I'm not even intentionally avoiding it,
Mhm.
as more so I'm not allowing myself to be affected by outside elements or outside, other people's personas or other people's egos or whatever. Like, like I said before, man, like a person can only take you as far as they allow themselves to, and I
Mhm.
have no control over anyone else, and no one has control over me. Like nobody can tell me what to think or how to feel, and
Mhm.
I can't do that for anyone else either.
Mhm.
So, I mean, if somebody has a problem with me, I'm me, and I'm going to continue to be me. And
Mhm.
like, yeah, I can sit here and say, hey, it's unfair of you to have this opinion of me that you formed 5 years ago, but you don't even know me anymore.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
what it may be unfair, but like if that's the only effort that they're willing to give it, then it's not on me to try to convince them otherwise. I would rather just, okay, that's fine, that's you, and that's your decision,
Mhm.
and what will be.
Yeah. And I think it loops back into the concept that there's an infinite number of versions of you because every individual that you meet creates an a person that isn't
It's
necessarily who
such a
you are.
it's such a mind blowing and insanely obvious concept,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah. But once you
It
like
really is.
really get to the point in your life where you kind of I like to use the term grok. I don't know if you've heard that before.
I
Uh,
haven't.
it's from a sci-fi book that the word grok is there's no word in the English language that actually covers it. Um, it means to fully and intuitively understand a concept,
Ooh,
right? So if I say I grok what you're saying, that means that in my soul you've connected with that very like that thread, that thread of consciousness that allows me to
word,
really
yeah.
vibe with you, right? So
Yep.
once you grok that concept that you don't exist, the way that you see yourself is a lie. It's not
Oh,
true.
seriously. Oh,
It
yeah.
right?
Nobody ever that you'll ever come across sees you anywhere remotely close to the
No.
way you see yourself. There's
No.
no way. Even the person you look at in the mirror is not the same person that you think
No,
like,
it's not.
or like you hear your own voice on like I guess on a voicemail these days. I'm gonna say an answering machine, but it's like, whoa, I really
Yeah.
sound like that. But is that how other people hear? Like, is that what my voice sounds like to other people? Because that's
Yeah.
not what it sounds like while I'm talking here and
Yes.
thinking I'm hearing
Mhm.
myself. But
Mhm.
then on playback, it's like, whoa, is that even me?
Right. That was a shocking experience the first time I held a microphone on a stage. I was like, "Holy shit, I
Yeah,
sound like a child." Like, what the fuck is coming out of my mouth? Like, stop it. Just go home. And then eventually you kind of get used to it and you're just like, fuck it, this is how I sound. I can't change it.
right.
Kind of reminds me of it's just kind of a funny thought. I read something in you know how like male ego is very connected to the size of the penis, right? Which is weird, a concept in general. But I read something that said every man sees their penis as much smaller than it really is. They perceive it, they shrink it in their brain, and you can't control it. And I was like, really?
I fully believe that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's so
totally.
weird. And it kind
It,
of
it is really weird because like there's like, I don't know, I guess there's different aspects of that too. Because like, I mean, I've just recently heard the term big dick energy.
oh, dude, me too. That's totally new to me. I was like, I get what you mean, though.
it's a hilarious concept,
It is.
you know. I mean, like it's whatever. I mean, it's all right, cool. Like that person's
There's a
casual and
bunch
in
of women
control, but
there's a bunch of women on Twitter using hashtag tight pussy energy. And I was like, that's
yeah,
fucking awesome.
yeah, totally.
Oh man.
I mean, you know, those things matter, you know, but we're humans, and like you know, and some of the shit you can sit here and say it doesn't matter, but behind closed doors, like you know, even if you're just thinking about your own physical appearance, like it can be a big deal.
So, do you find that through what you're doing with your life, you have a really well defined I'm trying to find the right words to ask this question because if I word it wrong, it won't make sense. Um, you are covered in tattoos, beautiful artwork all over your body. You got the really cool teeth going on. I fucking love your teeth, by the way. I'm like a huge fan. I'm a huge fan.
Thanks. Yeah,
Um,
actually, so just to interrupt you real quick, one of the things that I was doing in Europe was going to see my dentist. And just it's been like 5 or 6 years or something since I've had all of this permanently done, and I just wanted to get like a checkup and a
mhm.
polish, and you know, just make sure everything was cool. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, thank you, and it takes maintenance and all of that stuff.
So, do you find
Um,
yourself coming across people who do you find your definition of self, of you, to be compatible with what you experience from the external? Or do you find that I struggle personally to connect the two? Do you think that through expressing yourself visually with your body, that you've found a better connection there?
um, that's a really good question that I don't know if I have a complete answer to. I not at first. Like I didn't start getting tattooed like become like a rugged career or anything like that, you know.
Mm,
And like unfortunately, even still with today's society, especially in small town places, you know, small places or way off the beaten path or certain foreign countries or whatever, you know. I
mm-hmm.
mean, like it's still a big thing where people will instantly judge you based on your appearance.
Yeah.
It's still way bigger than a lot of people realize it is.
Everyone
And
who meets me thinks
there
I'm a biker. Everyone who like initially meets me, they're like, "Oh, he must be a tough guy." I'm like, "No, dude, I'm like super sensitive. Don't make me
yeah.
cry." Yeah.
So I don't know. Like I used to be, and I still certain aspects, like I still am like super introverted, man, and like maybe I don't seem like it, and maybe I didn't seem like it when I met you or whatever. But
Mhm.
like certain situations call for certain actions, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
And like if I'm in a situation where I'm unfamiliar, I'm that dude that, or at least I used to be, like put my hood up and like feel like I was hiding. My hood was a security blanket,
Mhm.
or wearing sunglasses indoors
Mhm.
and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, so you know, it was never done to draw attention. It was never done to seem tougher than I really am or
Mhm.
anything like
Mhm.
that. But it does definitely still to this day get mistaken for that. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
going
Especially in other
into
cultures.
stepping foot into a yoga studio that is the majority of them are like middle-aged white women, you know, and
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
they're soccer moms and
Mhm.
stuff. But you know, so I'm the unfamiliar territory, but I'm the
Mhm.
one, you know, initially I was the one going into their familiar territory, like
Mhm.
stepping out of my comfort zone. And I know certain certain people, like just my presence, or not just mine, but anybody who is modified or whatever, just their presence can make people uncomfortable
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. It can for sure. Yeah. I think that that's changing in America. In Western culture, it's changing.
It is. It is because I mean, like I just used the comparative that like you know it was a bunch of soccer moms or whatever, but you know what? Like so is a good majority of our clientele at the piercing studio now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like it used to be. Like I said, 20 years ago when I started, dude, I worked in a biker shop.
Mhm.
There aren't really. That's not, especially on the piercing side of things. That's
Mhm.
not really a thing anymore. We're
Yeah.
catering to middle-aged women and sorority girls and these middle-aged women's,
Mm-hmm.
we're like, we get suggested in mommy groups all the time for like, hey, take your 7-year-old here, don't go to Claire's, don't go there, take them here, and like, so it is definitely, it's changing. It really is.
And that's
But
something you
it's
mentioned that I think if people don't know, people who might be watching the show who aren't pierced or have kids or they want to take their kids to get pierced, please take your kids to a real piercing studio and have it done by a
yes.
qualified professional. Don't
Yep.
take your kids to Claire's to
No.
get
Some
pierced.
of them, some of them take a weekend training. Some of them don't even
Hmm.
do that. Some of them watch an instructional video,
Yeah.
and they're
And
that kind of gun that they use on hogs and cows to
yeah,
tag them.
yeah,
It's the
yeah.
same thing. It is the same exact thing. It's
Hmm. Yeah. And
the
anybody can
same
just go on
thing
Wish and
for
buy
that
a
stuff.
crate of those. Like
Oh
anyone
yeah,
can do that. And it's very dangerous. It can lead to infection. It can lead to complications. There are nerve centers in your body that you need to be aware of. That you might think this flap of skin is just you can put a hole anywhere. That's not really how it is. You gotta go to a professional you trust and who is trained. It's really important.
yeah. I mean, not only that, there's like there's an issue. There's issues with like aesthetic anatomy too. Like,
Hmm.
there are girls that come in here that want like their second, like they've had their ears pierced since they were 18 months old, and they want their second lobes done. And one of them's like way up, here, and the other one's way out here. And one of them's at a funky angle, and it's like,
Hmm.
oh, they've been that way since I my parents took me in, and I had no choice. They got my ears pierced for me when I wasn't even 2 years old, and I've
Hmm.
had them for you're 21 now. You've had them the entire time, and like that kind of stuff happens all the time too. And like
Hmm.
piercing guns can jam. They're just they can't be sterilized. Anybody that
Hmm.
tells you that they're going to pierce you with a piercing gun, that they say, oh, it's sterile. No, it's not. There's nothing on that. Like a lot of those piercing guns are made with plastic components, and if
Yeah.
you were to properly sterilize them the way that a piercing studio sterilizes their elements, it's gonna melt.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
gonna it'll be defective. It's not
Yeah.
gonna work properly.
Absolutely. Um, so, one thing I'm really interested in kind of just personally knowing about you is because, um, I don't interview people that I'm not interested in getting to know, right? Like, what are music or poets or books or movies? What inspires you? What do you really feel connected with?
When I was like 18 or 19, I read this book called Evasion. And dude, all it is it's literally like these like gutter punks, and it's just collected short stories about them like dumpster diving and train hopping and all of this stuff. There
Hmm.
used to be like this anarchist collective called Crime Think, and they would put out like anarchist propaganda, and
Hmm.
like that kind of shit really interests me. Or like living off the grid kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Or
Yeah.
I really like, if we're talking books, I really like nonfiction. Fiction stuff's cool too, but
Hmm.
like I'd rather learn something
Yeah, I agree.
than be entertained. Um, uh, Music, oh man, like I'm all over the spectrum, and I know people say that all the time. They're like, I'm into everything but country music, and like, you know what, I kind of am.
Hmm.
I really like, I like late '90s screamo, like
Hmm.
really fast, like blast beaty, like fucking grind your face off metal. I really like slow, sludgy metal, but I
Hmm.
also like shit like Kanye West
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Taylor Swift, and
I love
like
Taylor Swift. Do you
I
love Taylor Swift?
I
Did we
totally
just
love Taylor
did we
Swift,
just
dude.
become
Like,
best friends? Oh my
I think we
god.
became best friends right now.
I fucking love Taylor Swift, dude. Her music is
Yeah,
so
she's so
uplifting
good.
and fun to listen to. It's like, man, it puts me in such a positive mind space.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, it's not even that kind of stuff. It's like, dude, Tori Amos will forever be one of my favorite artists.
Mhm.
And of course, like, I like your typical. I've worked in a tattoo shop for over a decade, like Portishead and stuff like that
Yeah,
that
yeah,
like gets
yeah.
played
Yeah.
in tattoo studios everywhere you go across the globe.
Tool.
Um, yeah,
A
Tool.
lot of
So like I
Tool.
like that.
Yeah.
Deftones. Like that shit's rad. I really like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I really like slow, doomy, sludgy instrumental, or I mean, it doesn't have to be instrumental, but like
Mhm.
I'd say one of my favorite bands of all time is Neurosis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, they've just been playing fucking doomy metal since the '80s, man, and it's just they're old dudes, just old metalheads who are
Yeah.
just still slamming. You know, and then there's like I like Russian Circles a lot, which is I actually played Russian Circles a lot at that meet in Portland. It's
Mm.
just like
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's kind of metal, it's instrumental, but it's vibey. You know,
Very
it's
vibey.
doomy, it's
Yeah.
vibey.
Really good stuff.
Um,
I liked it too. Yeah.
I like EDM. I like you know there's a bunch of I like trance. I'm not like a super big fan of house music, but I like a lot of other music that could be closely categorized to that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've been
Um,
listening to a lot of synthwave lately.
yeah, that stuff's cool too.
Yeah. I get
Yeah,
like
that
really into
shit's
it.
good for like
Yeah.
yeah, it's good to just like shut the lights off
Mm-hmm. It's good meditation
and just
music.
kind of chill. Like synthwave is good for meditation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I listen to it a lot when
yeah,
I'm writing too.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you
Um,
go ahead?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I even listen to classical. Like my partner, like she reads like a
Mm-hmm.
lot, and she'll turn on classical music and just sit there and read a couple chapters of her book. And like
Yeah.
I'm totally down with that. That's awesome. I'm
It's
super into that.
yeah, me
It's
too.
great.
The older you get, the more I think it comes with age and experience where you start to connect with the emotions of music without the requirement of the artist lyrically telling you what to feel.
Right. Like oh yeah, definitely. We went on a fairly long drive today, like just like a quick back and forth, like just like a 3 hour road trip. And like
Mm-hmm.
when we started off, we were listening to like '80s jams, and then it went to like '90s hip hop, and then it went to like all of these like classical rock songs that are like montage songs on like
Yes,
romantic
yeah, yeah,
comedies, you
yeah.
know? Like,
Dude,
so
I don't know if you've listened to him yet, but there's a guy named Orville Peck. Are you familiar?
I think so. I
Dude,
think I think I have.
he
It sounds familiar. I'm not placing like what right now, but it definitely.
if you could
But
take
I'll make a note to definitely check it out now.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think you'll really like it. If you could take Roy Orbison and bring him into 2019 and make Roy Orbison flamboyantly gay, that would be Orville Peck. Beautiful.
Dope. I'll
Beautiful.
probably be into it. I would
Beautiful.
probably definitely be into it.
It's so good. Shayla's other partner, Brian, that you met at the suspension, bought us all tickets to go see the guy live. And man, I had so much fun at that show. People dressed up in like country western wear, and it was a whole scene, man. It was really cool. I think you might dig it.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're
I'll
coming
go
up.
check it out.
I know you're. I know you've had a busy day, and we're coming up on about an hour and a half here.
Oh, it's all good, man. I'm having a good time.
Cool.
Whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Just let me know if at any point you need to go or anything, and obviously we'll just kill it off right there. I just don't want you to feel like you're like hostage to
Yeah,
on the
man.
show.
No, not at all. I'm having a real good time. I mean, we're just talking. We're just vibing.
Yeah.
I don't really have anywhere. I mean, like I have no obligations until I open the piercing studio tomorrow. Like I'm gonna go to my partner's house after this, but like I'm not in any hurry to get there. I spent the whole day with her. Like whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I told that's kind of with me too. When I do the show, it's like, man, it goes how long it goes. Like, it's fun. It's fun till
Right.
it's not fun anymore.
Yeah, I mean, like I've watched. You know, like I told you before we started. Like I've watched some other podcasts and like you tell things what happens. Like you know, it's like okay, cool. Like we've said what we've wanted to say. We said let's call it here. You know,
Yeah,
but like
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we don't have to be at that point yet. It's okay.
So what? One of the things that I'm really interested in that I like to ask people about because I'm interested in people's opinion on it is extraterrestrial life, the concept that we might be visited, they might be here, they might not be here. I'm not sitting here saying, well, I think that this is definitely what's happening, but I think it's an interesting thing to consider because as humanity advances forward, both with technology and socially, our structure of society changes. The way that we interact with each other changes. And I like to imagine this distant world that's, say, a million years advanced from us, who doesn't have war, doesn't have poverty, doesn't have racism, um, and they're out there fucking flying around in space, just having a good old time, discovering new shit. Do you ever think about that? Do you ever like kind of
Oh hell
space off
yeah,
and wonder about that shit?
definitely, man. Like not only like out there, but like just like different planes of existence, different dimensions. I mean, I think you mentioned DMT a little bit.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I'm totally about DMT. I've definitely had experiences that I mean, like you can't ever bring everything back from like a
Hmm.
DMT experience, but
Yeah.
like there are some fucking crucial elements of my existence that I've brought back from DMT experiences.
There is a
You know, there,
communication inside of DMT. There is absolutely, without a doubt, a communication with something the fuck else.
yeah,
I don't know what
yeah,
it is. I'm not trying to say
right,
what it is, but it's there and it wants to talk to
right,
you and it wants to help
dude.
you.
It does, it really does. That's the thing is like I tell most people when they're experiencing it for the first time, like just give in,
Mm-hmm.
just let things happen. Don't fight it
Mm-hmm.
because nothing's there to hurt you. And like if you feel like you're going in a weird direction, like you'll realize that, and all of a sudden you'll be going somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I have lived lifetimes doing that shit, man. The most recent one that I remember, I'm pretty sure I lived the life of like 8 year girl, and like I came out of it like holy shit, like I was that person
Mm-hmm.
for a little while at least. And I remember like was that like a different life of mine, or is that like is that a different plane of existence,
Did you
or
enter
what?
did you enter another real being's consciousness? Were you
I
transported?
think so.
You
I
know?
do because like I wasn't viewing me. Well, at first, I was viewing someone from the outside, and it was like a little blonde girl. And then
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, I was like, "Wait a second! I'm not looking at them anymore. Now I'm seeing what they see. I am this little blonde girl."
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not always like that.
No.
Sometimes it's just geometric shapes and
Mm-hmm.
colors, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's like weird things that I think are laughing at me or whatever. But yeah, dude, I totally believe in that kind of shit. I'm like I'm a conspiracy theorist, but
Oh, me
not to the
too.
point
Yeah.
where I go down like ridiculous rabbit. I know that's kind of a lie. I kind of go down some rabbit holes sometimes. But yeah, dude, like you don't like how can you know anything about the unknown? Like you can't. There is no 100% this is this because
Mm-hmm.
of this. Like
Yeah.
there's no way.
There's
There's
no
no way to tell.
reference.
There's
There's no
yeah,
reference,
right.
right? It
And
kind of
it's like
reminds
it
me.
seems like
Oh, I
when
was just gonna say, it kind of reminds me of in calculus when you're trying to decipher, curve versus distance, right? To the curve versus run, you have to have a base. You have to have a
right,
reference, right? So we measure mountains off of sea level. Is there an ocean next to Mount Everest? No.
right,
There's no sea
right.
level to measure it against, but we just have that reference, right? And for certain things, especially consciousness and DMT and kind of being, I don't know, a little bit of a psychonaut, if that makes sense, there is no reference.
Oh yeah,
It's an unknown
right.
unknown, and you just experience it.
And the thing is, like, you don't know, like, just say, like, let's just say you and two of your friends are just sitting there, and you're like, all right, cool. Let's smoke some DMT. Let's turn all the lights off, and let's like just make things completely silent, and let's smoke
Mm,
some DMT. Like where you go in comparison to where they go, like there's no point of reference. You guys could
mm-hmm.
be in the exact same place or somewhere completely
Yeah.
unknown to each other. You're just sitting there in the same room with one another,
It's
but like
almost
your consciousness is like wherever the fuck it is, and
it's almost as though where you go is like it alters itself for you. It takes you to the place you need to go. Even though you might be there, like you said, with
it does.
with people, they're going to where they need to go, and you're going where you need to go.
So one thing that I've always said, and this is true with suspension too, man. Don't go into it with expectation
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because you want to get what you need,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
I fully believe that, and I believe that with these days. I believe that with most aspects of my life. Like you shouldn't really have expectations. I mean, there are things, there are goals that you can work towards, but you shouldn't make assumptions, and you
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't have expectations.
Oh
You
God, I agree
you
so
know,
much. I agree so much. And the release of expectation is so freeing.
yeah,
It relieves
it really
anxiety. It
is.
really relieves anxiety so
Sure
much.
does,
Yeah.
buddy. It sure does.
Way better than Xanax could ever be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like I've done all. I mean, like I've lived a life. I've
Mm-hmm.
done some shit that like I'm, drug wise or whatever, that like I'm not proud of. But like
Mm-hmm.
this this thing that I'm finally coming into, like in my mid 30s, that
Mm-hmm.
like I wish I would have discovered it before,
Yeah.
but it's not, because like this is the right time for me to be
Yeah.
figuring all of this stuff out. Like I said,
Yeah.
for the first time in my adult life, like I'm as free as I've ever been,
Mm-hmm.
and so now not only am I able to do things I was never able to do before, but in doing so, I'm discovering pieces of myself that I didn't even know existed.
One of the things I think about a lot is the concept of the one consciousness. So we're all just expressions of the universe trying to experience itself, right? So it kind of goes back to that conversation we had earlier about dealing with difficult people. You're not dealing with a difficult person. You're dealing with a difficult aspect of consciousness.
Right,
Something hard, and it's confronting you for a reason, right? Everything kind of has a place and a time. Um,
right.
and I find that I didn't discover serious introspective use of psychedelics until I was in my 30s.
I I completely agree.
Yeah.
I did a lot of psychedelics like in my
Mm-hmm.
teens and early 20s. A lot,
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
But like it was recreationally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the things that I'm doing now are not. They're not I mean, they are. Of course they are. Like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking take some acid and have a great fucking time, or whatever. Not even just acid specifically, or what. But like, it's an experience. It's not just recreation. It's
Yeah, it's a
I'm learning
tool.
things
It's a
about
tool.
myself and about my surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely a tool,
The other day I
and
was
it's helped me
sitting.
become a better person.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. The other day I wasn't feeling good. And I wasn't sick. There's nothing wrong with me. I just didn't feel good. Like my stomach was kind of upset. I sort of had a headache. And
Some shit was a little off. Yeah.
yeah. And I went out to the living room and I was like, "Hey, do we have any fucking drugs in this house that aren't pharmaceutical? Um, like, what do we have?" And Shayla was like, "Oh yeah, I got like a bunch of mushrooms in the safe." And I was like, "Yes, that is exactly what I need. Give me that." And I came back to my room. I ate some mushrooms, not a lot, and I felt better. And then the rest of that night, I spent thinking about how I how my physical well-being was so intricately linked to my emotional well-being.
Oh yeah,
And I wasn't taking care of my brain, my spirit, and that's why I didn't feel good.
definitely.
Yeah, as soon as the
I
mushrooms kicked in,
can
I felt better.
completely attest to that, man.
Yeah,
I mean, like, not only, dude, I'm also in the best physical shape of my life
you're in
right now,
incredible shape. Yeah, yeah.
and like it's because of everything else. It's not like I said, I started going to the gym like a couple of years ago or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but like I wasn't mentally ready. And
Yeah,
like, yeah, okay, cool. Like I was like conditioning my body, but like I wasn't conditioning the rest of myself. and
yeah,
and once I started doing that, and then letting my body be conditioned as a result of conditioning other things, it started making a hell of a lot more sense, and it got easier, and it's still getting easier.
yeah. I've kind of reached a point now where obviously I'm a chubby dude. Obviously, I smoke cigarettes and I eat shitty food and I just don't take good care of my body. But in the last like year, I've really like I feel bad about that. Not necessarily the cigarettes, because tobacco's been used by humans for thousands of years. But
Right,
um,
if used properly, it can be good for certain things, for
yeah,
sure.
but just the eating, I call it science food, right? Food that never goes bad. That's not
Comes
good.
out of a box, and
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah. Um, and I find myself just like kind of like what you're saying. I'm becoming emotionally prepared to take better care of myself. I
Right.
I'm more invested in living longer because I'm more interested in the journey. And I think that you don't really feel that until you get out of your 20s.
Definitely, man.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I mean, it just is a lot of people. People are weird, and a lot of people are like, I'm not gonna live past 25. I was like,
Mhm.
I was one of those dudes for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah,
Like,
I was too.
but I've lived a lot. You know, I'm 35 now, like close to 36, but I'm still 35.
I just
And
turned 37 a few
I
months
used to
ago.
not think that I was going to live past 25, but the
Mhm.
last decade is the decade that I've truly fucking lived. And
Yeah.
like, I feel like the next decade is just absolutely going to tower in prosperity from the last decade, even.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm just learning, I'm growing, I'm evolving, and any, hopefully, most people can grasp that concept, and they stick to some sort of regimen that does that for them,
Mhm. What's your
whatever it may be.
what's your relationship with money? I'm not asking you how much money you have. I mean, how do you
Right.
feel about it? Like I have this a very interesting relationship with it, and I think that a person's relationship with money, I believe that money is alchemy. I believe
Yeah.
it's a magical force, and I believe that it is literally taking one thing and turning it into another, which is the definition of alchemy. Um, and I think that your relationship with it helps define how broad your ability to experience the world is, if that makes any sense at all.
That's absolutely. Um, in with all of these other changes, in the last year, like I wouldn't say I'm absolutely a minimalist,
Mm-hmm.
but I got rid of like 90% of my personal belongings. You
Mm-hmm.
saw my van.
Yeah.
Like, my goal is so I that it runs off of solar. It has a fridge. It has an induction burner. It
Mm-hmm.
has a sink. My goal is to eventually like live off grid in that van, but not exactly off grid. Like, I'm still going to be in cities and doing all of this stuff, but like, just kind of reduce my footprint. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not it's
Mm-hmm.
not even specifically to do that, but it's just to know that I can. You know,
It's the shedding.
to
Do you think it's the shedding of obligation?
to a certain degree, yeah, it's not obligation, but the shedding of insignificance, the
Mm,
shedding of insignificant things.
yeah.
Like, once you start getting down to like just the very skin of things, you realize how many things in your life you could actually live without and be
Oh God,
content
yeah, yeah.
never seeing ever again.
So
You know,
something I went through recently, had a bad breakup with one of my ex-partners, and found myself suddenly homeless. And my brother had a Scion XB that he couldn't drive because he got a DUI. Synchronicity. Um, and I lived in that car for a year, and I didn't. I wasn't miserable. Like, I
right?
wasn't unhappy. I parked my car in this beautiful spot with a babbling brook and hay fields and beautiful Oregon trees, and I would sleep with nature every night. I had all the food I needed, water I needed. I had clean clothes. I had access to a shower. I do a stand-up bit about it where I say, like, I was literally the 1% of homeless people. Like, I was the Rockefeller of homeless dudes. Um,
Right. Yeah, living homeless in luxury.
right.
Yes.
And that experience in my life, it was so valuable. I'm so thankful that it happened.
Right.
And I was terrified day one. And then when we moved into a house, I was like, I don't even know if I want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how long this fan thing's gonna last. And like, I just kept I've been wanting to do it for a while, and I just kept pushing it off and pushing it off. And then
Mhm.
it was like, well, why? What's the point of pushing it off? I'm just making excuses. So let
Yeah.
me get the van, and then I'll figure everything else out.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing. And I don't know. I don't know how long. I don't know if it's gonna last a year. I don't know if it's gonna last 5 years. But I'm gonna do it just
Yeah.
to have the experience, and then I'll figure it out from there.
God, do you find yourself watching a lot of like the van living YouTube videos and like how people
I
set up their
started,
bands?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Dude, I get really into it. Like I'm like, "Oh man, that's so cool. I love the way you put that drawer there and like
I,
the way you ran your solar is like really smart and I
yeah.
yeah, it's neat. I nerd out on shit. Do you nerd out on shit like
Yeah, of
yeah.
course. Yeah, rigging, like, dude, like I said, like with suspension, we borrow and adapt. It's like I'm not an arborist, but I use arborist gear,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I have like arborist mentalities towards some things, and
Yeah.
like spanning a suspension point where there's no vertical directly above me that I can just drop something from, and I have to span from a tree that's 20 feet over there and another tree that's 30 feet over there, and I got to
Mhm.
run a line
Mhm.
straight across and drop a point from the middle. Like that's borrowed from arborists shit,
Yeah.
or whatever other sub community there is. So like I have to nerd out on stuff in
Yeah.
order
Yeah.
to better my own practice. And then of course there's other things that I nerd out on just for the simple fact of nerding out on them. I mean, like I got into now I'm just using like whatever run of the mill pod
Oh
systems
my
I can
god,
find.
you're
But
about
like
to tell me
years
how
ago,
balls
dude,
deep you went into vaping cuz I did
oh
too.
my god, so deep into vaping. I
Dude.
was like turning my own coils, like making
Mhm.
Claptons, like all of that stuff,
I was saving up
and like
money to buy like limited run like hand turned fucking mods and shit. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, I get into dumb shit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
No, that's interesting. I and see this is the thing that makes this type of thing so cool is when we walk away from this one conversation, we'll probably be friends forever.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no doubt. This is rad. This
Yeah.
is super rad.
Cuz we find out like I thought you were a very different person than me. And I thought, man, I can get so much insight. But now I see that we're a lot alike. We have a lot of shit in common. We've
Right.
like literal tangible things that we have in common that we both nerded out on vaping. Um
Would have never known had we not had this conversation.
yeah.
Nobody's just going to be walk up to you and be like, "Hey, did you know? By the way, 5 years ago, he was like super into vaping." Like, no, you're not going to find that out unless we
Right.
have this soulful communication.
Yeah. So like as you obviously you've experienced a lot of success over the years, and that success isn't free. There's a lot of struggle that comes along with it. Um, so now you're kind of like you were saying, you're prepared for that next 10 years of prosperity and growth, where you can take the tools that you've gathered and do more, right?
Boy, I sure hope so.
Oh, I have no doubt. I have no doubt, man. I feel like in 10 years we'll talk to each other and you'll be like, holy shit, I had no idea you were going to do that. Me either.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely correct. I just told a buddy of mine who's in the suspension community. He makes suspension rigs. Like he's not really he's a practitioner, but he's not really a facilitator.
Mm-hmm.
Like he doesn't. I'm not like, hey, dude, like go mark that person for a knee suspension. Like that's not the dude. That's not the dude that I'm gonna like. Or hey, go tie this for this amount of hooks. Or
Mm-hmm.
like, but he's still involved in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a very similar conversation with him yesterday, and like one of the last things that I said to him is, hey man, like I've been involved in this community for like well over 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
and honestly, like I took a step back for almost an entire year, and I've just like recently like come back into it like head on. Um, I am happier with what I am doing and where I'm at, like just in the field of body suspension, like community aside, just like what I am doing for this thing that I am passionate about, or what I'm doing about this thing I'm passionate
Mm-hmm.
about. I am more content with where I'm at with it right now than I ever have been. And that's crazy, dude, because like a year ago, I was feeling the complete opposite.
Me too. I stepped away from comedy and I kind of disconnected from my writing career. I turned in what I had to turn in, but I wasn't like I was just writing, putting
Yeah.
words on paper. Um, I didn't perform. It completely disconnected, and I told people I don't think I'm ever gonna go back, and it was my girlfriend that I have now, and she looked at me and she was like, "There's no fucking way you're not gonna go back on that stage. There's no way. There's no way." She was like, I see now today the person that I see in front of me doesn't want to do that, and that's cool. But the person that you really are in your core,
Yeah, right.
you can't walk away from it, dude. You
Yeah,
can't.
you can't deny that shit from yourself.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna come back no matter what. If it's something that you're passionate about, it's gonna show its face again.
Yeah.
Maybe a year, maybe 10 years, but
Mm-hmm.
sometime it's gonna be like, oh hey, I really used to love that thing.
Yeah.
Why don't I anymore? Let's figure that out and
Yeah.
let's find some fucking love for that again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
And
exactly what I just did.
in doing
Not
that,
just, but
you find out a new way to love yourself in a certain
yeah,
kind of way, right?
yeah,
And that's really cool.
definitely.
Yeah.
It is. It's amazing.
Do you feel like do you feel like I get this impression with the way that the world is going and the kind of the vibe, the collective vibe, that we're right on the edge of something really big. Like, I think that in our lifetimes, by the time we are, I don't know, grandpa age, 70, 80 years old, we're going to live in a world that didn't exist now.
We already are, man. We're already living in a world that didn't exist when we were born.
Oh, dude, our generation, yeah. It,
Like,
my son has no idea what it's like to not have a smartphone.
I was just gonna say the same thing. Like, trying to tell my daughter that like phones had cords,
Mm-hmm.
or like there wasn't like you couldn't call somebody and have them answer it. Like, okay, yeah, sure, there were car phones and stuff like back in the '80s, but not like some fucking computer that's cooler than the computer I had when I was growing up that fits in
Right.
my pocket. You know?
Earlier today, I talked to a buddy of mine that we were like best friends like 20 years ago, and we used to, the thing that we were into at the time was hacking things to do shit it wasn't supposed to do, like streaming music from a cloud,
Yeah.
right? Back in the day, I spent like 3 weeks hacking a Motorola Razr so that it could connect to an FTP server where I had all my MP3s, right? And I was like, this is fucking dope,
That's the
dude.
dope shit back
Right?
then,
This is so
yeah.
dope.
And now it's like some fucking 10-year-old. It's like, oh, cool, dude.
Right.
You know,
Right.
like, I was doing that 2 years ago. I was 8. No
Yeah.
big deal.
And it used to be so expensive to access stuff like that. Now it's gotten to a place where, like, dude, my cell phone costs $60.
Right.
And it does everything I needed to do.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Everything.
So what do you think the world's going to look like in 30 years?
I don't know, man. It depends. It depends on. Like, are we living in a simulation? It's like,
Oh, dude, we are definitely in a simulation.
Who knows? It's so hard telling. I mean, is the world even going to exist 30 years from now? Or are we going to blow ourselves up?
Oh,
are
man,
we,
yeah.
are we going to have like a mass level extinction? Like, my beliefs are my own beliefs, and I'm not going to get like too depth in that. But like, humans are ruining the fucking planet.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, we are.
Like,
yeah.
Who knows?
We're very short-sighted. There's a mathematician named Eric Weinstein, who he was on Joe Rogan. He's on Joe Rogan a lot, actually. I love listening to this guy talk, and he put it in a way that I really got, like I really felt connected with. And he said, we've reached a point as a species that we have a lot of power, but very little wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very short-sighted. We're children playing with guns.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. I mean, it's really hard to, obviously it's really hard to predict the future, but it's like, which direction is it going to go? Like, are we going to start uploading our consciousness into a cloud? Like, or like, who knows what the fucking next step is? There's so many people that have so many things going on under the table that we're
yeah.
And then it circles back to your UFO, the UFO conversation or whatever. All of this stuff is really starting to pop out in 2019. There's a whole bunch of UFO documentaries that are dropping right now, like the Bob Lazar stuff.
Oh God, I love Bob Lazar so much.
Jokingly said to my partner as we were going to sleep last night, like, she's not super involved on social media, and I'm like kind of becoming more involved than I was and probably even should be, mostly for marketing and stuff like that. But then I feel it's sucking me in again.
Yeah.
After taking it for a while. But there was this thing. I don't know how long it's been a thing, but like now there's like a Facebook petition on people storming Area 51 for answers and stuff. And it's like, I said something to her about that as we were drifting off into sleep last night, just to have another quick laugh, like right before I saw this meme, and it was like a clip from the Fast and the Furious or something, and it was like Vin Diesel and The Rock, and it was like Vin Diesel all small standing next to The Rock, like wearing like military garb and like just towering over him, and it was like Vin Diesel was like 7,000 Kyles with a Facebook petition that are going to storm Area 51, and then fucking Vin Diesel was like all of the security guards who are military trained and posted at Area 51. It's like,
I already signed up, bro. I'm a Naruto runner. I'm in there.
Yeah.
I saw a meme that referenced that. It was like, the dude was like, I put in a request for work to go to Nevada for time off, and my boss was like, so you gonna go party in Las Vegas? And I was like, yeah, party in Las Vegas. Definitely not going to Area 51. It's like,
so yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I've been keeping my eye on AI development.
Yeah, that too. Like, oh my god, dude, when Elon Musk is like, hey, stop this shit. It's like that dude, like he deals with that shit on a regular basis. Like he knows a lot more about that stuff than like the general public does. And if this dude's like, hey, maybe we need to slow down a little bit, like, well, fuck, are we like destining ourselves for something that is beyond our own capacities of control?
I love the way he put it in his interview. I don't remember who it was with where he said this specifically, but he said it's possible that this is our destiny and that humans are really just a bootloader for AI.
Right.
We're really just here to give birth to that baby.
Yeah, and it very well could be. And you know what? I mean, again, what will be, will be.
Do you find it scary when you think about it? Like, sometimes I think about it and I feel like fear and anxiety, and other times I think about it and I'm like, oh my god, this is gonna be so dope.
To a certain degree, I mean, like, you kind of approach everything that's new with like a little bit of standoffishness and anxiety. So yeah, maybe to a certain degree it is a little frightful. But if it's something like that, it's a hole we've dug for ourselves.
Yeah.
And like, personally I'm a part of it or whatever, but like as a species, fucking man, we deserve it if that's what it comes to. It's something that it's a situation we put ourselves in.
And it almost comes back to like what you're doing with your life, this pushing of boundaries, the pushing of physical capability. As we approach an age where maybe physical bodies might not be a thing, maybe like you were saying, we upload our consciousness to the cloud. It's important that these experiences are had. It's important that we don't leave shit on the table.
So that's what I was gonna say. Is like, am I like putting it down to brass tacks? Am I afraid? No, I'm not. If we ended this interview and I walked outside to go to my car and I got hit by a car and I died, I'd die content. I'm happy with.
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, hell yeah. There's always more things that I want to accomplish and more things that I want to achieve. But like, I can't complain about the life that I lived. And even if I did, first of all, who's going to listen? And second of all, if I have something to complain about, why the fuck didn't I change it?
Yeah, absolutely. God, that's such a good point that I don't think enough people think about. It's like, if you're unhappy, it's not a matter of your circumstance. It's a matter of your willingness to break them.
Exactly.
Like, how much insecurity are you willing to deal with so that you can move on, go to the next level, right? Nope. Everybody, we're broadcasting live on Twitch right now, and a lot of people who broadcast via Twitch, it's mostly a platform where people they play video games and they talk to their community and they hang out together and do that. I like Twitch because it allows people to interact. People could come in the chat at any moment and just type whatever they want to say to us, and we can interact. I think it's a totally new platform in that way. Um, but to make the metaphor for video games, you have to grind to level up.
Yeah.
You have to do shit that's not fun in a game that you're supposed to be having fun, because the fun you want to have is at a higher level.
It's down the road.
Yeah.
And that's life.
Yeah.
That's how it is, and that's how it should be. I mean, if we're not working towards higher achievements, then when we get there, the satisfaction isn't as satisfying. The gratification isn't as satisfying.
Yes. It's like the difference between a person who grew up poor and worked really hard and sacrificed their whole life to have whatever thing or whatever situation in their life that they dreamed of. They will always love it more than the person who was born into a wealthy family, who was given everything.
Totally.
Now, I'm not saying that one person's experience is superior to another, because a lot of people who were born to wealthy families go on to do very powerful things.
Right.
And have huge impacts on the world and really do great stuff. But I think that that's the appreciation for what we have is so important. And however you learn it, it doesn't really, I don't care how you learn to appreciate things, you just need to. Right?
Definitely.
And that goes back to Buddhism, where you think about that the desire is the enemy. Right?
Yeah.
My girlfriend, our anniversary is coming up, and she asked, "Hey, what do you want for your anniversary?" And I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, and it was weird. It was one of those situations where you leave your body and you hear yourself talking. You're like, "Holy shit, I just said that," and I meant it. I looked at her and I said, "I don't want for anything."
And that's the best thing to have.
Yeah.
To be at a point where things are so good that it's okay to stay that way, at least for a while.
Yeah. Just sit
like,
down on the beach, man.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Just fucking enjoy it for a minute, especially if you put in the work. Like, you deserve it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, because I think when I upload this to YouTube and I share it on social media, I just have this feeling that people are going to watch this fucking interview. Right? I think that people are going to feel connected with it. If there's a kid out there who's like 15 and is depressed and is struggling, and he's listening to this show because he's into the stuff that you're into, and he came across this because he follows you on social media, or a kid that might look up to me, who knows? I hope that there aren't kids out there looking up to me.
Yeah, no shit, right?
Remember, guys, I'm just a dude on the internet and I don't Google anything.
Seriously.
But like, if that kid's out there that wants to talk to you, that wants to connect with you, what would you tell him if he was in front of you right now?
Don't give up. That's really it. Just stay true to yourself and stay true to your goals.
Yeah.
And it's okay over and over and then even some more. Just keep picking yourself back up.
Yeah.
Nothing can defeat you unless you allow it to. Not even yourself. Don't allow yourself to defeat yourself. Don't allow yourself to give up. With body suspension, the hardest part is convincing your mind that your feet can leave the ground.
Mm.
If you're in a vertical suspension or whatever is your first suspension.
Yeah.
But that's what I tell people. Like, don't go in with any expectations, because you're probably not going to get them, or you may meet and or exceed them. Or if you don't, then you're just going to be upset with yourself that you didn't get to what you thought you could. But you already went further than most people ever do, So, and that's just, it's just a good mantra to have in life, man. It's just hard work does pay off. It may not pay off when you expect it to, or it may not pay off when you think you're done, But life is going to decide when you're done with the work you're doing. You're not the one who gets to decide.
The universe
It's
is
either
not inclined to appease your ego,
right. Yep.
but it is here to support you.
You don't owe anybody anything, and no one owes you anything.
Mm-hmm.
And more so, no one owes you anything.
Yeah.
You know, like you owe it to yourself to realize that no one else in this world owes you a fucking thing.
When while you were raising your daughter, you talked about her earlier and how you really were a committed father, a very committed, very present dad. Um, what were the things? Because my son's 13, right? And I'm getting to the point now where he's got his own little personality, and he's really becoming a separate human, right?
Yep.
What were the things during that period of time for her that you felt like you taught her differently than you were taught? What were the things that you're like, you know what, this is how I was taught, and I think I can do better?
I mean, more so than anything else, just be who you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And don't let life put you in a box.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, yeah, like from our conversation earlier, like, I walk into somewhere and I'm a heavily tattooed dude.
Mm-hmm.
I got fucking golden chrome teeth. I got big holes. I got face tattoos. I got, my throat, my hands, my armpits, like whatever. They're tattooed, and people make a certain judgment,
Mm-hmm.
but that can change in an instance once you start speaking to them. But
Yeah.
people are going to put you in a box. Don't allow yourself to actually enter that box or be content in any box that you don't want to be in.
That's so true. And by the way, not to interrupt you, which I don't want to do, but we got somebody in the chat. His name is Bismos. He said, "Hey, or what's going on?" And I'd like to encourage you. If anything we're saying you find interesting, or you have any questions, please feel free to type it into the chat. We're really, really glad you're here, and you are very, very welcome. So continue.
Cool. I mean, I was able to show her things just based on the negative connotations of people being judgmental on my appearance,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. I was able to show her how people shouldn't be treated by pointing out, like, you see how that person just reacted? Like, that's not how human.
That's not healthy.
Being should be.
Yeah.
And, I mean, of course, like some of her, and in another aspect, dude, I'm only 10 years younger than, at least 10 years younger than the majority of all of her parents' friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So she just, I'm me, and that's who I am, and I can't be anybody else. And either you accept that or you don't, but that's not on me. That's on you. And that's what I try to teach her: is you are your own individual. Be the individual you want to be.
Mm-hmm. I find with my son that one of the things I have been focusing on in recent time is teaching him the difference between what society says a man is and how to self-define, right? Because he's been struggling with bullies and stuff, and he's a very sensitive little dude. And I'm like, look, man, you don't need to look at me and be like, that's what a man is. Because, dude, don't let me define what that is for you. Like, because I was raised by a dad who was very hard. My dad was very, very tough. And he told me that what made a man was suffering. And enduring suffering silently.
Yeah, and in his generation, I mean, it kind of, that was a big thing.
Yeah. And I'm like, dude, you're growing and becoming a man in a world that's very different than the one that I became a man in. So let me teach you the stuff that nobody taught me. Like, hey, man, it's cool to hug people.
It's cool to cry.
It's cool to cry. It's cool to feel feelings. Yeah. It's cool to feel like a failure. It's cool to admit it. Right?
Right.
And I put him in jiu-jitsu, which which I think has really helped him with his confidence, and like now he comes home crying a lot less often. Yeah, because I just think he's got that in him. He's like, okay, yeah, I went. I know that I'm okay. And if
Right.
you're bullying me, it's not because of me, bro. You're not doing that because I fucked up.
Right.
You're doing
Right.
that because you're fucked up and you're
Yeah.
unhappy
Because
and your home life is messed up. How can I help you?
exactly.
Mm-hmm. And I think that made a big difference for him, really. Because when I was a kid, and I'm sure it was the same for you, um, you kind of taught like, oh, somebody bullies you, punch him in the fucking face,
Hmm.
right? And I told him that self defense is really important, and if you feel physically threatened, you should absolutely defend yourself. If somebody hit you, hit them back. Do what you need to do to
Right.
survive.
Just don't be the aggressor.
Right? Don't be the aggressor. Don't be the asshole. When
Hmm.
somebody walks up on your argument with that other little dude, I want you to think about how they see it. I want you to think about how a third party person would walk up and observe the situation. Who do they think is the bad guy?
Right.
And if you think for any moment that you might be perceived as the bad guy, then your actions are probably not the correct ones.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not. It's a very good thing to teach. I mean, that's not always going to be the case because again, people can only take you for as far as they can take themselves,
Yeah.
and some
Yeah.
people are going to make you out to be the bad guy just because that's you know. But but yeah, no, it's really good to know both aspects of that for
Yeah.
sure.
And kind of thinking about Kanye West, you mentioned that you like Kanye. I like Kanye too. A lot of people are hating on Kanye these days because people are like,
Yeah, he's a weird dude.
yeah,
Like, whatever. His music's good though.
yeah. The one thing that I always say is like, have you ever been your authentic self as hard as he's doing it?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
because I think maybe the reason that you dislike what he's doing isn't what he's saying, it's that you really want to be that. You really want to get in touch with that part of yourself that you're afraid that people, wouldn't like you if you said these things.
Right.
You know?
And they're not. It doesn't have to be the same things. It's just like some aspect of something in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yeah, you can add or subtract and replace things. It's really just,
Yeah.
I don't agree with everything he says. And on some level, I don't care that much about what he says. I care very much about how he's fearless in his willingness to be, this is me. I'm not going to play a role for you. I'm not your dancing boy. Right?
Right.
And that's something that, and that's something I think at the end of the day, this whole conversation has been about that.
I agree.
Like, that we
Yeah.
want
I mean,
people
there
to
are
do
people
that.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Dave Chappelle did that.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah.
He had the Chappelle show, and he was super
Mm-hmm.
successful. And he was like, "Oh fuck! Like this is not what I expected. This is not what I wanted." And he took a step back for
Yeah.
a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And like as everyone has known and seen, like he's starting to come back into the spotlight. But he's very vocal about what happened and why he made the choices that he did. And
Yeah.
he was like, "It's fucking Hollywood bullshit. They weren't allowing me to be myself." And you know, and it's really cool that he's vocalizing that because there are younger generations that are listening to that and
Mm-hmm.
adhering to that
Yeah.
and taking
Yeah.
that shit to heart.
And I think that people, young people who might be watching my show because they like my comedy, um, young people who might be watching this show because they follow you, um, I would very much like all of these people to take away from this that we are who we are, and what we do does not define who we are. Who we are defines what we do.
Right. Exactly. I've repeated throughout this conversation like I am who I am, and
Yeah.
but like it's not I am who I am. It's I am who I have chosen to be. It's
Yes.
who I have. I started out as a piece of clay, and I've tried to make it a point to make myself shape myself rather than letting my surroundings or my other
Mm-hmm.
people's influences shape me.
Was there a person that you
Such, and that's
came?
a really hard thing to do.
It is. It is. Was there a person that you saw or came across in your younger life before you kind of started to understand this concept? Was there a person that you emulated, someone that you saw and you said, "Oh man, that's a good human. I'm gonna be like that."
My grandfather.
Your grandfather?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. My maternal grandfather, my grandfather on my mom's side. He still is. He's definitely he's the dude. He's the man. You
Yeah.
know, he's the closest thing to a father figure I would say that I ever had,
Mm-hmm.
and I will be eternally grateful for a lot of things that that man taught me. And there's not anybody in my life that taught me anything remotely close to that. You
Yeah.
know, and then like if you want to go further in my life and you want to say like if you want to move it to like at least like a semi celebrity aspect or something like that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's people. I mean, I could point to a different person in like any of the sub communities that like I want to or am a part of. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
suspension wise, you know, I mean, there's Alan Faulkner who that dude is he's known as the grandfather of modern suspension. You know,
Yeah.
between him and Fakir Musafar, like those two dudes are the only reason suspension is what it is in Western culture. You know,
Yeah.
and they took it and they went totally different directions with it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Fakir was like, "This is ritualistic. This is all it should be. This should just be a couple dudes going out into the woods and like, you know, burning sage and doing this and doing that." And Alan's like, "No, fuck that. Like, let's put it out in the public. Let's spotlight this shit. Let's take it to performance. Let's, you know." And
Mm-hmm.
you know, without either of those people, I wouldn't exist in the capacity that I do, at least that part of me, and that is such a huge part of me that no, I can definitely flat plain as they say that I wouldn't be the person I am today
Yeah.
if those people didn't exist.
Have
You
you had
know,
the opportunity to spend any time with either of them?
I've met Fakir a couple of
Mm-hmm.
times. Unfortunately, he's passed.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Just kind of fairly recently, like within the last year or last 18 months or so.
Okay.
I definitely did meet Fakir a couple of times. I had a couple of like brief conversations with him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Alan Faulkner, on the other hand, was a huge role model of mine in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and now I can 100% contently say that he's a peer, he's a friend.
Yeah.
You
How
know,
neat is that? That's such a cool
yeah, dude,
feeling. Yeah.
seriously,
Yeah.
like he's an amazing person, and you know, he is the grandfather of the modern suspension movement, and without him, none of us would be doing the things that we are, and because of because of that and a lot of other things, you
Mm-hmm.
know, again, people can only take it as far as they're willing to do, but like he's caught like a lot of grief and you know, taking a lot of slack and all of that, but that dude has fucking bent over backwards for the suspension community, you
Yeah,
know,
Shayla got a chance
and
to meet him at Superpool about 8 years
yeah,
ago, I think,
yeah,
and
cool.
she had the same things to say about him. That he's just a really cool guy who really cared about
Yeah, he's
people.
just
Yeah,
a really genuine, down to earth dude, and he's just extremely fucking passionate about body suspension.
yeah. Have you had the experience? And this has just recently started to happen to me. Um, have you had the experience where see, because our interaction here is unique because I'm an outsider from your core community, right?
Right.
So I can approach you as a peer immediately, right?
Mhm.
Because I met you cold, stone cold. I didn't know anything about you, so we were able to have this conversation as equals. Have you experienced it where younger people, um, you notice that they defer to you, that they look up to you, and you start to understand, okay, now I have a bigger responsibility. Has that happened to you yet?
It has. I mean, like, I don't want to like openly admit that with like a huge. I don't know how to word it, but like I don't want to say it in a way that like it sounds arrogant because it doesn't create arrogance. But like, yeah, there's definitely like, dude, I teach body suspension related things.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are events that I go to where I teach seminars and stuff like that. And it's like, I'm just a dude,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'm just a person. I'm just a human being. But like for people to come up and be like, I've looked up to you for 5 years, or
Yeah.
like I'm amazed with your work, or it's extremely it's extremely humbling.
Yeah. It really is.
It,
Yeah.
it really makes me check my perspective, and it
Mm-hmm.
makes me like, oh shit, like people are watching,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's a weird feeling.
Yeah.
That's a really weird feeling.
And I certainly,
Um,
I want you to know that I ask that question kind of with the knowledge that I want you to know that ego's not in question in when I ask you that. Um, it's more like you're saying, it's humbling, right? It brings you to a place
it
where
is
you're
extremely
responsible.
humbling.
Yeah.
Um, and then like in some aspects, like it almost it's so humbling sometimes that it can almost make me feel a little guilty.
A little
Maybe
uncomfortable.
it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's not exactly guilt.
Yeah.
But like, when I say things, dude, like, oh man, okay. So in 2017, I was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award, the Dallas Suspension Committee, and Alan Faulkner is the one who presented
Wow.
that to me.
That's really great.
And like to
Congratulations,
have
man.
like, dude, 20 years ago, that dude was like, oh my god, like that's fucking Alan
Excuse me.
Faulkner, and now we're peers, now we're friends.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can just like call him on the phone or Facebook message him or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
like I'm not gonna say we're on the same level because we're not. That dude has done fucking so much more than I'll ever do for the suspension community, but like to have him present me with this lifetime achievement award and be like, you're so deserving of this, blah blah blah. Like it made me it still makes me feel a little guilty because it's like why me,
Yeah.
like I could point to 5 other people in this room that are watching me accept this award that I feel like are way more deserving of this award than me, you
Mm-hmm.
know
Mm-hmm.
and it's a weird feeling. It's a super weird feeling. It's a good feeling and it's also a bad feeling. Like that one specifically, like that was, I don't know, man. Sometimes the suspension community can be rough. Like I said, any small community can be rough,
Mm-hmm.
And I was presented with that award, and I like, not to get like deep, and I definitely don't want to sound egotistical or arrogant or anything, but like I feel like I was never given the opportunity to like actually like soak it in and like realize that I was presented with that for a specific reason and all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Because like some of my peers really made me feel shitty about it, man. Like some of these people that I thought were my best friends in the community,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
really downtrodden the fact that like like, well, this dude who, I mean, anyone that knows me probably knows who I'm talking about. I'm not gonna name names or anything like that, but
Mm-hmm.
like this dude that I thought was one of my best friends in the fucking community,
Mm-hmm.
I got this award, and he didn't congratulate me. He didn't do
Oh,
anything. He
that
acted
hurts.
super standoffish.
That
And then
hurts.
like a week or two later, I get this Facebook message from him, and he's like, "Hey man, I'm sorry. I never even acknowledged. I have never even acknowledged the fact that you won that award. I had some time to think about it. Maybe you are kind of deserving of it. But when you got that award, I had to excuse myself from the room. I went out into the parking lot and cried because I felt like I was made way more deserving of that award than you, and I didn't understand why you were up there.
Mm-hmm.
And to
Yeah.
have someone that like, dude, I didn't start suspension with them, but like out of a lot of motherfuckers in the community, like me and this dude, like we learned a lot together. We
Yeah.
experienced a lot together. We grew together. Like we came into our own together. We worked on crews together. We did all of this stuff that like we were on the same path. And like if you think that you're deserving of the award and we're on the same path, then why are you deserving of it and not me?
Mm-hmm.
And why are so selfish that you couldn't be happy for me because you were too busy disappointed in, like, not even disappointed in yourself, just disappointed in the fact that your community didn't acknowledge you, they acknowledged someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, it's so funny how many
And shit that,
parallels
like,
there
dude,
are.
so depressing,
Yeah.
it's so upsetting.
Yeah. No, I had a friend. It's so interesting to me how many parallels there are between the comedy community and your community with the suspending and the piercing. Because I had a friend call me who started after me in comedy. He recently came on the podcast. His name's Keith Cameron. Real fucking great guy. Um, and he called me and he was like, dude, I just wanted to tell you I just booked a feature set at Harvey's, which is a pretty big comedy club here in Portland. It's a huge step for him in his career. And my first thought was, how did you beat me?
Right.
And then my second thought was, oh, fuck that. That's awesome, dude. That's so great. That's so cool. Like, I know you. You're my friend. Like, you could end up in movies.
Yes.
You could end up in movies. You could be
Yes.
huge. And you're my friend. We're peers. I want you to succeed, bro. I want you to eat. I want you to have a feast in life. But it's hard for some people to do that. It's hard for people to
Yeah.
see that success in other people and acknowledge it and feel pride in other people's accomplishments. Because
Definitely.
10
I
years
mean,
ago,
honestly, that's one of the things that, like, after that, it was like, maybe I do need to take a step back from this community. Like, and that was such a weird time for me. It was like, hey, like, you're the youngest person to ever receive, like, okay, so they've only given away, like, maybe, like, 5 or 6 of these Lifetime Achievement Awards, like,
Mhm.
through the Dallas Tucson in the suspension community or whatever,
Mhm.
But, like, out of any of them, like, I'm probably the youngest by almost a decade or something.
Wow, that's a
So,
huge
like,
achievement.
I should be fucking proud of that,
Yeah, yeah. You should.
But my best friends downplayed it so much that, like, I never really had the opportunity to, like, pat myself on the back and be like, "Fuck, good job, dude."
Yeah.
And, like, here I am, granted this Lifetime Achievement Award, and immediately after, it's like, oh man, maybe I need to take a step back from this community. When I should have, like, that's when I should have fucking taken the reins and, like, faced it head on and
Mm-hmm.
just been like, all right, well, fuck, if this is how they feel, and then, like, obviously I'm doing something good, and let's keep going.
Yeah, let's push.
I'm glad. I'm glad I took a step back and reassessed everything, because I did come into it with a completely, not completely different, but definitely a different outlook.
And I think everyone who takes pride in what they do and works hard to achieve things in their life is going to come across that energy at one point or another. And I hope that you and your friend are in a good place. And I hope that you guys were able to communicate. And
I hope so too.
Yeah. Because it sucks, man, and I get it, I really do. I like coming from a very competitive community, which is what comedy is. We are all competing, but I like to tell people, man, look, man, we're all competing, but we're competing for an infinite supply of food. Like, we can all make it. We can all eat.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like this thing that we do, with body suspension, like, this isn't about us, man. This isn't about the facilitators. This isn't about the practitioners. This is about the life that we touch. This is about the people that we open their mouth. We are just of their. It's not ours. It's not ours to delegate. It's not ours to hold on to. We're just a vessel for their experience.
Yeah. Wow. That's an excellent way to put it.
And a lot of people don't realize that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, ego starts really taking a hold.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets the best of some people, unfortunately.
Ego is such a dangerous thing. It's a very dangerous thing.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And I mean, like, there are. I'm guilty of it too. Mm-hmm. Of course.
Oh yeah. Like, we all are.
I started doing what I enjoyed artistically with suspension rigging, and then I was like, oh hey, like, dude, still, again, like I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but like I do something that like with my rigging, like I do it a way that I don't think anybody else in the community does. People
Mm-hmm.
do things similar, but like, dude, I will, like I told you earlier, like I'll put a 24-point suspension on one continuous dynamic line,
Yeah.
and like that takes a lot of work, and it
Mm-hmm.
takes a lot of math, and
It
it
takes a
takes you to
special
just
kind of
fucking,
imagination too to make those
yeah,
connections. You have
it
to see
it
it in your
does.
head before you do it. Mm-hmm.
And so like, there was definitely a period where I was like, well, I'm doing this thing, like, yeah, other people are doing artistic rigging, but they're not doing it as complicated as this, so like
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing this thing that nobody else is doing, and like my ego started to take control.
Yeah.
Thankfully I had the opportunity to check it,
Yeah.
and I left that shit, I left it miles back. Hopefully it stays there, and that's,
Yeah.
I mean, like you ask what my goal is for the next 10 years, and it's to not let my fucking ego consume me ever
Amen.
again.
Amen. For me, it was when I was making oil because I kind of did the same thing that you're describing. I learned how to express what I felt was art through texture of concentrates and chemistry, and I developed new techniques to do it not only better but faster. So
Yeah.
it was a period of time in the concentrate industry where to make a good stable shatter that you could pick up and hold took about 5 or 6 days. And I developed a technique that could do that in a few hours. So it's a revolutionary step forward, right? And dude, I was balls deep in my own ego for a
Yeah.
while. And when I came out of that business and I made the decision to move on, I was like, how stupid was all that pride? And it kind of
Seriously.
looking back on it, after the fact, I was like, that's ugly. That's an ugly personality trait. I don't want to see that in myself. Um, and when you experience that and you see it and you back off from it, it is a place you never want to go back to. It,
Right.
yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. It ruins it's still to this day, because like, people have formed an opinion of shit that went down 3 years ago or 5 years ago, and they're
Mm-hmm.
they're not open minded enough to like have a new experience with me or whatever. Like, it's definitely tarnished my name,
Mm-hmm.
and not just me, it happens to everybody.
Yeah.
I'm just using myself as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but
So moving,
hopefully it just never comes to that again, and I don't think it will.
how have you reconciled with yourself moving forward from that and realizing, okay, well, I have made decisions or said things or done things that have tarnished these relationships, and I may never get to go back to them. I hope that I do. As you continue forward in that same community, because I walked away from that community, I had a much easier time with it, right? Than what you're describing, because I moved on. I never went back, and I have no intention to. Um, so, do you find yourself just saying, okay, I get it. That person thinks I'm a dick. They have a good reason to think I'm a dick. I'm open to a new experience with that person, and I hope they're open to it with me. Is that kind of how you walk into it when you see them?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hold something against somebody that they did 3 years ago. Like, people,
Mm-hmm.
it's human nature
Yeah.
to adapt and evolve and grow and overcome. And me personally, man, just in the last 9 months, I've had so much personal growth
Mm-hmm.
that like I'm not the same person I was a year ago. Of course I am. I'm still Steve Easley.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm always going to be Steve Easley, but the
Mm-hmm.
fucking Steve Easley that's in here is not the same Steve Easley that was in here a year ago or 10 years ago or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And like, me knowing that about myself, I have to know that about every single other individual that I come in contact with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have to give them a new opportunity. Of course, there's like, okay, you've had so many strikes, like I'm just gonna,
Yeah.
I'm done.
Oh yeah. Obviously.
But like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not gonna let that affect what I do
Mm-hmm.
in this community. Like, I like teaching. I like the interactions. I like suspending people for their first time and being a
Mm-hmm.
part of that experience. But again, I'm just one little part of it, you know. Like they're going through so much in their own head that really
Mm-hmm.
I don't even matter. Like
Yeah.
there are so many other people out in the world that can uh, exhibit this. Exhibit's not the word I'm looking for, but there's so many people in that can in this community that can put out that same thing, you
Yeah.
know. So it's just
Do
I
you
have to go into that with the same mentality towards other people that I have to go into it with myself.
have you found yourself re-examining what the meaning of forgiveness is now that you've
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah, definitely.
yeah,
Yeah, there are people that like I know that they're the scum of the earth, you know, but like they could change, you know.
yeah, they could
There
grow.
are people that
Yeah.
think that like I'm the scum of the earth,
Mm-hmm.
but I've changed, you
Yeah.
know. Maybe I still am the scum of the earth, but like just because this person thinks I'm the scum of the earth and they've told person B that I'm the scum of the earth and person B had that opinion 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean person B hasn't had it since then and that they've changed their opinion, even though person A still has the same opinion.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. When I was just thinking about my friend Keith that I mentioned a little while ago. We had this like altercation over like I think it was like just a little bit of money, and I was supposed to do a set on one of his shows that he did, and he had asked me to help run some AV stuff. I took Shayla on a date to this show because I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna perform. Let's have a date. Come with me." And I ended up spending the entire show in this booth doing AV, and she was super mad at me, dude. She was way mad. She was like, I just wasted my whole night. I could have been doing other stuff. You didn't even sit by me. She's very upset. And I got so mad at Keith, and I went up to him and I was like, you know what? Fuck you. Fuck everything you stand for. Fuck this fucking show. I'm never going to fucking fuck with you again. And we didn't talk for like a year. And then like a year later, I texted him on Facebook, and I was like, by the way, all those fuck yous, I'm really sorry, man. Like, I didn't mean that. And I really care about you. And you're a good dude. And like, forgive me for getting upset
Right.
with you.
And like, dude, like the shit that I've pulled in my life, man, like there are things that like I mean like I was a junkie at one point, you know? Like dude, I've done some fucked up shit. Not even towards other people, just in the way that I presented my own self, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
dude, you know, and like
I was a full on
so
gang
if
member when I
yeah.
was a kid. Yeah.
So like if that person knows about me, you know, they gave me a chance back then, and I
Mhm.
ruined it back then. I can't expect them to give me another chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm responsible for the way that I put myself out there when I met them initially, or I'm
Mhm.
responsible for the way that I put myself out there when I thought we had a friendship.
Mhm.
I fucked up because I was too junked out, you know, and I can't have expectations for other people on how they're going to perceive me or my actions anymore. All I can do is continue to put myself out there in a better way and hope that they're receptive to it.
And
If they're
forgive
not, I
yourself.
have control over that.
Forgive yourself. Right?
Yeah.
Like be like, "Oh shit, yeah, I was an
Oh
idiot
yeah.
when I was young,
Mm-hmm.
and I made bad choices and I did bad things, but that's fine. I got to forgive myself. I have to move on from that.
Right.
I'm not that dude." Right?
Right.
My past actions don't define my future self. And learning to forgive other people helps you learn to forgive yourself, right?
It really does.
Yeah. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up because I smell that dinner is about ready, and I haven't eaten any food.
Okay.
I was really nervous about this interview. I want to tell you, I was really
You know,
nervous.
me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
This went great.
Yeah, this was the best show I've ever done.
Man, this was really awesome. This is the first podcast I've ever done. And I'm really, I feel really good about it. I'm really looking forward to being able to like view it from an outside, obviously not from an outsider, it's me, but like being able to view it third party,
Yeah.
not just being involved in it, like being able to go back and like just watch our conversation and be able to absorb it even more.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
Fuck, dude, I was super nervous about it too, man. Really, like I've done a couple of interviews. I've done some like on video interviews. I've done interviews, you know, for I live in a university town. There's students that come in and interview us in the piercing studio all the time, but they're just like writing stuff on paper or like have a little voice recorder or whatever. Like this is this wasn't even an interview. This was just two dudes hanging out and talking about some shit, you
Yeah,
know. And this
this
was
was
rad. And this was I didn't know what to expect. I like I'm a fan of the podcast, so like I kind of like, oh yeah, it'd be cool if what it is. It's just hanging out, whatever, and that's what it was. And it was amazing. I had a really good time.
yeah, me too. And you know, I if there's anybody out there who scrubbed through this interview and didn't see the whole thing, here's the shit I want you to walk away from, and I think Steve would agree. Be yourself, be true to yourself, be determined, be tenacious, be honest, let go of expectation, let go of desire, and keep pushing forward. And you can be Steve Easley, you can be Brad Cox, you can be whatever it is that you emulate, whatever it is in your life that you see as your future self. If you can conceive it, you can manifest it into reality with force,
Definitely.
right?
Don't make assumptions and make sure you follow through.
Yeah,
If you fucking make a goal, stick to it. Don't
yeah,
give up.
yeah. Shout out any social media, any marketing stuff you want people
Yeah,
to.
man. I mean, so my name's Steve Easley, but I spell it Steeve. So two E's in the middle. Easley is Easley. I have my personal Instagram, which is just like I don't really post a whole lot, but I do. I'm throwing stories up there all the time. Most of the time, I don't have a Snapchat. I use Instagram, like
Mm-hmm.
kind of or whatever. Like I throw Instagram stories of my travels and stuff. That's at Steve.Easley is my main Instagram, and that's Steeve
Mm-hmm.
Easley. I also have a very suspension oriented Instagram, and that's just suspending with Steve, and that's again two E's in the middle. That one's pretty much all suspension, maybe a little bit of my French bulldog here and there because he goes to suspension events. My main one is going to be suspension. It's going to be yoga. It's going to be basically what I'm doing. It's got my travels and all of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. My jewelry company is called Modifika, Modfika. There's an Instagram for that. My piercing studio released body piercing. Released like, oh, I just released that from my hand.
Yep.
REASE. That's release body piercing. I do a semi-annually suspension event called the Release Retreat. We just had it last weekend here in Iowa over the 4th of July weekend. It was a 3-day event. It was fun. It was the inception of it was 2015. I've tried to do it yearly since then. It has been yearly. It's always been in Iowa. I don't know where the fuck I'm gonna be this time next year. I'm trying to live in a band, so it may not be in Iowa next year. But after the success of this one, I definitely would like to continue to do it.
Mm-hmm.
There's suspension. There's suspension related education. There's just a fucking area of really cool people.
Yeah.
Really loving, welcoming, inviting events.
And all of the
I like
links
to
will
really
be
try and
all of the links will be in the description, so that people can click them and follow. And I encourage everyone to reach out if you want to learn about suspension. If you want to follow Steve on his social media, it's very inspirational. It's very it's exciting. You live a cool, exciting life, and I think a lot of people, even if they're not into suspension, would enjoy it. You know, they'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say thank you so much for being here, for spending the time with me, for connecting with me, and now we're friends. And you're gonna come on the show again at some point, I'm sure, right?
Oh yeah, I'd love to, man. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, this was great.
Yeah.
For sure.
This is exactly
just again real quick about the band and shit. I'm trying to make like a mobile suspension unit. So if suspension's not available in your area, I can come to you. I'm trying to book like multiple people, but I also do private suspensions and stuff. If anybody listening is interested, like Brad said, feel free to get at me. We can start a conversation.
Yeah. If you're out there in a small town and you feel isolated, you feel like you can't connect to your community, this is a perfect opportunity. Get your little tribe together, and reach out to Steve, and he'll show up in his suspension van. And really, it's legit. I mean, it is a fully self-contained situation, and it's very impressive, very professional. Um, and
Hey, and even if you're not in a suspension and you just fucking need somebody to talk to, like I try to reach out. I'm not some asshole that's just gonna look at your message and not respond. Like
mm,
if you want to have a conversation, just reach out to me via any of my social media. I'm totally cool with that.
yeah,
That's what Brad did.
yeah,
I mean, like we met once, but that's what he
yeah.
did.
And and I was really nervous about it too. Like when I sat down, Shayla was like, "Are you gonna message Steve?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I will." And then I had this is episode 10. This is episode 10 of the podcast, so it's like a milestone for me. And I was like, I sat down at the computer. I was like, I'm gonna message Steve, and I'm gonna do this. It's cool if he says no. I won't take it personally. Um, but you're such a nice guy, and you're so generous with your
Thanks,
time,
man.
and everyone should know that, like, it's not because I'm special. It's not like, he's like this with everyone he talks to. I've watched it happen.
This is literally the second conversation we've ever had, right? Like,
Yeah,
we spoke a little bit once, and then now this, and
yeah,
like, and that's cool. That's how life should be.
yeah,
That's how human interaction should be. I'm
yeah.
all
And I feel the same way too. So if anybody out there you want to talk to me, you please message me. I'm Next Gen Retro on YouTube, Next Gen Retro the number one on Twitter. My DMs are open. I'm here for you. If you're going through something, if you're like, hey, I think that guy has some insight. I probably don't, but I'll try. I will be here for you, just like Steve said. Um, so yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I will be emailing you, not emailing, but messaging you the link. It'll be up tonight. At some point, it usually takes a couple hours to encode and upload and get the links together. Um, so yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show, Steve. I'm gonna go ahead and close it out. Hang out for just a 1 second.
right on,
Um,
man. Yeah, thank you
um,
and everyone else.
Yeah. Like, I hope everyone sees this and enjoys it, because I think that you're a truly interesting person that everyone should get to know. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Next
My
Gen
dog's
Retro.
cool too.
Dog is the dopest dog ever. Uh, if you need a fucking emotional support animal, this dog will kick it with you. Um, and he's all over Steve's social media, so you can connect with that pupper. This is the Next Gen Retro Chat Show live, and I'm so fucking glad that all of you are here. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your evening.